Good afternoon, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about the new moon in the second decan of Gemini. I hope you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon, enjoying Gemini season, and we're going to go on a little journey today. We're going to talk about all of the elements of the new moon, with the moon coming together at 16 degrees of Gemini. In the coming week ahead, we're going to take a look at Venus's Cazimi. Along with that, we're going to look at Mercury and Jupiter being co-present. It's a huge Gemini stellium. We're also, of course, going to look at the square from Saturn. We've got an overcoming square from Saturn that's pretty tight to the new moon. We're going to examine that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the fixed star Rigel, which is in the foot of Orion. And that's going to be having some influence over our new moon as well. We will go over the rising signs at the end, as well as an I-Ching and an animal to help guide us through it. Hoping to get through this in about 2 hours today, because gotta be honest with you, friends, I would like to go outside and spend some time in my garden today. We've got a big native plant sale going on tomorrow, and I got to make some plans and pull some weeds and get things ready. So hopefully we could stay on track today in Gemini season. Always love talking with all of you, but sometimes we get off on some interesting tangents. I'm just going to welcome some friends here today. Welcome, friends. It's nice interacting with all of you. I'm not trying to minimize that, but Devin is here. Says, "What's up, Devin, from Portland, Oregon? Nice to see you, my friend. Glad that you're joining us today." Deb Montgomery, what's up, Deb? Says, "Signed up for the book club. Ready to go. Can't wait." Awesome. I'm excited about that, Deb. It'll be great to get to work with you in person or over Zoom, I guess, but to be able to see your face and chat with you and talk about this awesome book, Braiding Sweetgrass. Yeah, I've got a link to this pinned in the chat on YouTube. This is Braiding Sweetgrass by Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. It is indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teachings of plants. We're going to be seeing all the ways that we can connect some of that natural wisdom to the turning of the year and the astrological changes that we go through over the course of the year. So I'm really excited about that. Check that out. It's a great way to create community. It's a great way to stay connected to nature. I'm hoping that we'll be able to help each other and teach each other about our gardens and go through that journey together. And she's a great writer. I'll talk about more of that in a second. Mr. Hindsight's here. What's up, Tom? Says namaste from sunny San Francisco. Nice to see you here, my friend. Tracy Gorman is here. What's up, Tracy? Says, "Hello, lovelies." Hello, Tracy. Nice to see you. How are you, friend? How are you? Good to see you stopping in. Robin is here. Says, "Hi, Robin." Hi, Spencer from Robin from Northern California here. Looking forward to hearing about the Gemini new moon. Yeah, me too. We'll dive into it today. I think it feels like a new moon that could be auspicious as long as we stay within our limitations. If we don't overdo it or overestimate our abilities. That's what I will say about that, just from the big picture. Michelle is here. Says, "Hello from Bonnie, Scotland." Nice to see you, Michelle. I love the little thistle that you have in your picture there. That's awesome. We've got some beautiful thistles like that we see in the native prairie habitats that we have around my neighborhood. Actually, we have some native prairie over by the high school where they eliminated a lot of the grass and just let it go wild, and some of those big thistle boys are growing up there. It's really cool. Tracy says, "You're awesome, Spencer." Oh, you're awesome, Tracy. Thank you for being here every week. It says, "My moon is at Gemini 0 degrees in the 9th natal." Well, we'll try to break it down for you. You're gonna have Jupiter hanging out with your moon, so we'll try to guide you on the right path here. Robin says, "I want to sign for the book club. Is there a payment plan?" There is, Robin, and thank you for lobbing that softball up here today. Yeah, so if you're struggling financially or you need to split the payments up, feel free to email me at spencermichaudastrology@gmail.com. I'd be happy to set up a payment plan for you. Whatever increments you need. If you want to split it up into 2, into 3, if you want to split it up monthly, that's okay too. But yeah, send me an email. I'll get that set up and we'll make it work. Okay, friends. Thank you so much for stopping in today. Let's do a couple announcements before we dive into it. I've got some offerings for you. I've got there it is. Sorry. So, I am a professional astrologer. I lean very heavily into Hellenistic technique. I also incorporate the tarot, I-Ching, the decans in particular. the 10-degree subdivisions of the signs and talk about that using mythological storytelling. So if that appeals to you and the work that I'm doing appeals to you here today, go check out my website, spencermichaud.com, and check on the Book Now button if you want to work with me in a capacity where I'm looking at your natal chart, looking at your transits, whatever. If you have questions, I'd be happy to go through that for you. I try to prepare meticulously for each reading. Someone was asking on the channel recently if I'd do a demonstration of a natal reading. I'm thinking about that. We could potentially do that. The only reason I might hesitate on that is doing a reading with someone so personal and so intimate to me that I feel like there would be something lost in that. But many of the techniques that I used in these live streams, I would use in your chart. I would break down every single planetary position, the tarot card associated with it, the Decanic ruler. We would talk about that. We would talk about any major aspects, the house placements of your planets, all of those things. It is a very in-depth process. That's why my readings are fairly long. A natal reading with me is about 2 hours long, and sometimes we go a little bit longer than that because it truly is a conversation and we truly get into the weeds with our astrological reading. So check that out, Book Now button. Hope to see some of you in that. I also have an announcement about my class for the summer. I'm doing a guided group study again, a book club for the summer. And as mentioned earlier by a few of you, we're reading Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. Really, really great book. Dr. Kimmerer, or Wall Kimmerer, is an Indigenous American and has some amazing realizations about our place in the ecosystem, our stewardship that we need to treat each other with respect and care and generosity. And I think it's just something that's really needed right now. We are in a lot of digital anxiety, whether it's through like artificial intelligence or just being online all day. Reconnecting with natural wisdom and will help us, I think, to stay grounded, to see hope on the horizon, and being able to connect that with the astrological turnings of the year, I think, is really an interesting combination. The planets are part of nature. The signs that they're moving through, all of them have a different role to play within the natural process, and being able to connect those, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a Discord for group discussion. We're going to have homework. We're trying to take this one at a little bit slower pace so that we don't feel overwhelmed with trying to read or discuss too much. So this one's going to go 8 weeks instead of 6. And I mean 8 sessions. So we're going to be reading this over the course of 3 months with 8 sessions that we meet up in. 4 months. 3 months? 4 months? I don't know. It's every second and fourth Monday of the month, friends. That would be 4 months. So forgive me for my horrible math skills, but I would be over the moon if you would join me for this. Again, like as Robin was hinting towards, there's payment plans available if the tuition is too much to come up with all in one go. I've worked with people in that in the past, and I'm happy to do so again. So check that out. There's a link to that in the description of the video or wherever you're listening today. And there's a link pinned to the beginning of the chat. Also find this on my website on the Book Now button. I'm also having a Gemini season sale right now. We're going to look a little bit at the decans of Gemini. We're going to talk particularly about the second decan today. But if you like that work, I have a series of webinars that I did on all of the 36 decans that you can find on my website, spencermichaud.com, and the store link. And the decans of Gemini is 20% off right now. Check that out. We go over tarot, we go over fixed stars, we go over mythology, we go over the planets that rule each of these decans and the signs themselves. Each of them is about 3 hours in length. So there's a lot of material to dive into there. Check that out, 20% off. And then I also have a beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, that has a magical business. So she is a root worker and a conjure worker, and she uses the elections of the planets to be able to make these beautifully elected magical oils. Here you see a Mars and Capricorn subseries called Blockbuster that helps you bust through any limitations or blockages that you might have in your life. I've been using that recently to try to just get my energy up to go and pull all the weeds in the garden, because sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to risk poison ivy or something like that, but it gives you courage. It allows you to work hard on things that normally you might be resistant to. And you can check her out on Etsy at Third Coast Mojo. And then finally, if you are enjoying the work that I'm doing here today, you can purchase a super chat in the YouTube today with a little $ in the chat, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and support the channel that way. It really goes a long way to help me buy time and resources and materials and equipment to do this live stream that I do each and every week. So I really appreciate all the support that all of you have got. All of you have shared with me in the past, and I would be eternally grateful for those of you who are able to donate today as well. Okay, friends, let's talk about this new moon. Let's check back in the chat for a second. Let's see, Uranus ascending, stopping in. What's up, Uranus ascending? Nice to see you. Coming to us from Aurora, Illinois, if I'm remembering correctly. KP1231, what's up? What's up, Karen? Hi, Spencer and everyone from Cleveland. Glad to finally catch you live. Nice to see you, Karen. Hope you're doing well today, and everything's treating you well down there in the flats of Cleveland. I don't know if you go down the flats at all, but I remember that's a cool place to go hang out. Oh, I took a trip to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a few years ago. It was actually quite a few years ago now. And that was something that stuck out to me. We went to the Flats, the Great Lakes Science Museum, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's a beautiful town. Let's see. All right, friends, so we're going to start diving into the new moon in Gemini II. We're going to bring up the chart and kind of show you what we're dealing with. So here is I'm going to share my screen, and we'll take a look at it. Going a little quicker today. I've got some gardening I need to do. I need to get outside while the daylight hours are still upon us. So I'm trying to streamline the discussion today on some level. I always love all the comments and the questions and discussions. That's why I have to be disciplined, because if I could spend all afternoon talking with all of you, and sometimes I do. But when you've got work to do and the daylight's only so long, you got to get to it. All right, so we're looking at this new moon in the second decan of Gemini, where the sun and the moon are coming together along with Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus at 8:37 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on June the 6th, which is next Thursday, if you are listening here on the recording live. So this big Gemini stellium. The moon, the sun, and Venus are all at 16 degrees of Gemini. I'm actually interested in this one from a personal aspect because my natal Gemini is at 16 degrees of Gemini. So this is maybe a really interesting new start for me personally. Hopefully I'll be able to share some insights. But I have some personal experience with the fixed star Rigel, which is a fixed star related to education and teaching. And this is something that's been a theme in my life for as long as I can remember. I've been teaching guitar and music and astrology since I was about 19 years old. I started my first teaching job when I was 19 and taught at a community college doing music and songwriting, and I've done a lot of adult education with music. I've taught astrology classes. I think we've even taught some gardening classes in various locales as well. So this is a great fixed star for starting a new education process, whether it's teaching or learning. This is something that was, Bernadette Brady talked about this in her book. I have it right here next to me. This is Brady's book of fixed stars, which I highly recommend. And she talks about Rigel in relationship to Osiris. And Osiris was an earlier version of that particular constellation, which we consider Orion now, the hunter. So I'm going to quote just a small part from her that I thought was really interesting. So she says, in ancient Egypt, to be like the brightest star in constellation is in Orion's left toe, touching the Eridanus, the river. In ancient Egypt, to be under the pharaoh's foot symbolized being under Osiris's protection. Osiris was gentle, bringing education and civilization to all lands that he conquered. Statues of Osiris show him standing with one foot in front of the other, and under his feet are pinioned birds representing his subject. The pinioned birds were not considered a negative image, but rather one of people receiving the wisdom and protection of civilization that Osiris represented. So she goes on to say, Rigel can therefore be thought of as the active educating sign of Orion. Rather than seeing this star only in relationship to ambition, as Robeson seems to, it is perhaps easier to see the whole picture. the concept of forward development, not just for personal gain, but more importantly for the gain of many. Rigel represents the educator, be it in local school, the public sector, or any field of knowledge. And then she goes on to list a number of people that have Rigel placements. So really interesting for starting a new education thing. I do really hope that we can work within our own limitations, though. I think that's really something that Saturn is really teaching us here. We want to make sure we don't ignore that, because with this stack up in Gemini, especially the second decan, we may want to do all the things all at once. I know me personally, I'm already feeling this. Like tomorrow, for example, there's a native plant sale, and there's also a huge neighborhood garage sale. And I want to do both things at once, but I think I'm really only going to be able to do the plant sale. And those are the types of choices that we're going to have to make. Our attention is attempting to be split in many different directions, which happens with Gemini. We've got Jupiter in Gemini now. It's exile, but also has some dignity by face. And that first decan of Gemini has a spirit in it called Tethys. And Tethys was the goddess of rivers or tributaries that are splitting off from the larger body of water. So you can see that happening in the beginning of Gemini. In this particular decan of Gemini, the second, we have a deity called Cybele. And Cybele was basically a deity that was born with both sexual organs, and the other gods feared their power and cleaved them in two. And there's many stories of trying to reunite and find the lost half of self. So this might be part of what we're going through as well, like really looking inward or maybe even externally to find lost parts of ourselves. There's warnings that come along with that. We have to be careful not to project both our good qualities or our negative qualities out into the world on some kind of other. We have stories of twins in Gemini. We have stories of one twin that is mortal, one that is immortal, Castor and Pollux. And one of those twins, Castor, is slain, and the other twin has to make a sacrifice of some of their time on Olympus or some of their immortality so that the other can live. So there may be themes of being faced with something that we have to sacrifice so that we can breathe life into our highest priority. It's hosted by Mercury in the first decan of Gemini. So I've got notes on all this. We're looking at this Gemini stellium here. We've got the full moon square Saturn, as we are looking at. We'll talk about that in a second. And let's talk about that host, Mercury in Gemini 1. Again, we've got that Jupiter-ruled decan where our options are expanding, and we may be gathering more information about which of those we want to pursue. I've often compared, and not just myself, but other people have compared Gemini to the phase of growth in the northern hemisphere that is related to the pollination phase of a plant or a flower. We have bees and butterflies that visit these flowers and collect pollen, aka information, but then they have to bring it back to the hive or wherever to process it and to make honey, to make it something that is providing nourishment or that can be consumed. So if we just, here's I think the really interesting metaphor about this. If we only collected the pollen and we didn't do anything with it, we'd become weighed down, we'd become heavy. Honestly, we'd become too heavy that we couldn't fly anymore. So that is really, I think, the lesson or warning of Saturn having the overcoming square. Says try not to get too heavy so that you can't fly with thoughts, information, with spreading your energy too thin, of collecting the information and then not processing it into something useful. Okay, like there is a unifying quality to Gemini. We're getting to the unified phase of the summer solstice. So we're ascending to the summer solstice so that we can decide what we want to nurture it during Cancer season to its fully formed fruition. The metaphor of flying is really important, I think, in this particular arrangement with Saturn. So let's take a look at that. Okay. The decan of Pisces that this square from Saturn is coming from is related to overconfidence. It's related to a sorcerer's apprentice type of energy, where we have different stories, metaphors, mythologies related to people who tried to do work or fly before they were ready. One of them is Phaethon, and there's a fixed star called Achernar in this decan that we get this Phaethon story from. Okay, Achernar is in Uranus, the river that Orion or Osiris is dipping his foot into on the pathway to humility. Okay, Orion was very boastful. He boasted about killing every animal on the planet, and Artemis was like, "You're not going to do that." And she sent the scorpion after him to kill him and prevent him from doing his damage. Now, when we see in the sky, what we see literally in the sky with the constellations is we have Orion or Osiris dipping his foot into that river, and that river goes across much of one of the hemispheres and ends up in the constellation related to Hercules. And Hercules was also called the kneeling one, which has significations around humility. So we're starting a journey that may be laborious to go from overconfidence or trying to do too much that will lead to wisdom and humility. So I think that this is part of this process that we're beginning. And of course, we have Saturn saying, hey, if you try to do too much, and in this case, in the Phaethon myth, Phaethon tried to drive the chariot of his father, Helios, the sun. And Helios begged him not to do that because he knew that the boy wasn't ready. And eventually he had to relent because he wanted to prove his divine parentage to Phaethon. And Phaethon, of course, lost control of the chariot, and Zeus struck him down with a thunderbolt, and he drowned in that river, the Uranus, because Phaethon was doing a lot of damage to the earth, to the heavens, etc. So we have to really respect the boundaries and the limitations of our abilities at this new moon. So when we go through the rising signs, we should pay special attention to the type of topic that we have to pay attention to. Okay, we have a focal point on a particular place in our chart with the new moon, with a huge stack up in Gemini. There's probably a lot of action happening in one particular area of our chart, but we have to pay special attention to where Saturn is speaking from, because when a planet is in the overcoming square, and we've talked about this on the channel a little bit, when a planet is to the right from the perspective of the center, from secondary motion. Okay, so you can see that we've got Saturn here on the right side, okay, which is basically following these planets when it goes counterclockwise due to secondary motion. That's the motion that the planets want to move over the course of many days rather than just a 24-hour period. Over a 24-hour period, they're rising in clockwise up to the culmination point at the midheaven. They're setting in the west, and then they're below the earth at the IC, and then they rise again at the ascendant. So with Saturn hanging out in that overcoming position, it's sort of like exerting this pressure. It says, hey, you're going to follow my rules. Like you are going to have to understand that if you don't do what I'm asking for, if you try to do this in an immature fashion, there will be consequences. So this is not necessarily true or as detrimental if a planet if a difficult planet is shooting the ray backwards. We've often seen this compared to someone who is in a car chase, and the person in behind has more vision ahead of them. So like imagine Saturn chasing a car in front of them and having a better view of where they're going to go. The car in front can swerve all over the place, but the car behind them understands where they're going to go. So this is sort of how we're breaking down a planet in an overcoming square. Now, here's the thing. Since we have a malefic here, it talks about potential challenges or limitations, or things that we have to do that might not be fun but are necessary. When a benefic planet is in the overcoming square, that can often be a bonification for a planet. It's a fancy word I've learned from Dimitri George and Chris Brennan, where a planet is basically helping those planets. So I think if we respect, long story short, I think if we respect the limitations of Saturn, we can still explore, as long as we just don't try to do too many things or spread ourselves too thin. That to me is the big message that I'm seeing being spoken with this particular new moon. Man, and I have a, hold on a second. Sorry. Let me edit this here. It's the new moon squared Saturn. Whoops. What's happening there? Let's remove that for a second. There it is. Sorry, technical difficulties. It's the new moon squared Saturn, not the full moon. And if somebody caught that in the nobody caught that good, but hopefully I caught it in time. So if you saw full moon on the screen, it's just a typo. This is the new moon squared Saturn. Okay, let's check in with everyone here. Uranus Ascending is back from a Caribbean cruise. Oh, that sounds like fun. Mr. Hindsight, Tom says the new moon will trine my sun moon. Oh, that's cool. That seems auspicious. Devin says bees can often become overambitious and don't make it back to the hive before sunset and perish. That is a perfect analogy, Devin. Yeah, I think that they get tired, right? Or they get too heavy with pollen. Same difference, right? So again, it's a warning from nature, from Saturn, to not be overly ambitious. One of the main reasons I chose to do my book club over 4 months instead of 3 months. Usually I would do it over 3 months. It would be 6 sessions, and sometimes we would have to skim over things. I like to really talk about things in depth, and oftentimes we just weren't getting to every single part that we wanted to talk about. So for me, I was like, let's just take our time. Let's really dive into this. I feel like there's a lot that we're going to be able to talk about. Let's extend it so that we don't feel rushed. And that might be good advice for all of you who are trying to achieve something in the coming months ahead as well. Bettina says, yes, I was thinking the Saturn square might not be that bad. Bettina, I mean, it all depends on your perspective. It all depends on your relationship with Saturn. I think that many of us, I have a healthy respect for Saturn. I think that it requires nothing less. I think that if you understand and work within limitations, the Saturn square does not have to be a deal breaker, I guess. But understand that there's inevitabilities that come from Saturn. There are consequences that come from Saturn. So if we don't heed the warning of Saturn, which says, don't overestimate your ability. In this particular decan, it is showing us the limitations between our dreams and what we can manifest. Okay? Just as those mythologies show us. If we just ignore that, we will experience the consequences of Saturn. Now, that's not necessarily true with every relationship in a chart. Sometimes if Saturn, let's say Saturn wasn't making this square, we may overextend ourselves and not suffer any consequences from that. But in this particular arrangement, it's very loudly speaking to us and says, you don't want to do that or the consequences will be real. And again, we'll break down from what area that might be coming towards. But here's the thing. If you follow Saturn's warning, you could still explore. You could still start a new process of education. You can still teach something. You can go on that journey as long as you respect your abilities. One thing I think that Saturn is also speaking towards is we can't try to fly. We keep with the flying metaphor before we're ready. I think that if we looked at this another way with the new moon on Rigel, this is telling us, hey, you might need to learn some more. You might need to educate yourself before you try to take flight. And that's okay. This is a perfect time to do so. This is a perfect time to learn more, to engage with a learning process. and to be disciplined about it, because that's going to help bring you to the place of wisdom. Remember, Rigel is the first step in the river towards wisdom and humility. And it is not just the, oh, well, we started something, now we know enough to go do something. This is like I don't know. We have to be careful about being gatekeepers of knowledge, etc. But I do think that there is certain things that we probably should take our time with. Like, for example, when I first started studying Hellenistic astrology, it took me a couple years to learn the system, to practice with it, to start giving readings with that in mind. It took me a couple years. Like I would say that I'd studied about 4 or 5 years before I started doing, before I really started diving in with this kind of thing. So you don't have to necessarily have that same time frame. Maybe it wasn't that long, if I'm trying to remember this correctly. But the point being is that if, like, let's say you're completely new to astrology, and in my defense, I was not. I had about 20 years of amateur interest, intense amateur interest in it before I came to Hellenistic astrology. But let's say you had no idea about the symbols at all. You're not just going to dive in and say, hey, I'm going to do a reading for someone for $300 tomorrow. Like, that's just not realistic. Not to say that you couldn't take a concept that you're learning and try to practice and help a friend, or maybe do something by donation, but trying to go and into flight before you're ready could lead to disaster. For example, if you don't completely understand the concept that you're working with, you can do a lot of damage to someone by misinterpreting the symbol and telling them something that might get them anxious before you understand how that might work out. I've seen this happen a lot. And to be honest with you, when I was much younger, in my early 20s, when I was, young and ambitious and I thought I knew everything, I probably did a few readings like that for people, where I would talk to anybody and everybody about astrology. I would ask someone their birthday in the grocery store, and we'd just start talking about astrology. And looking back on it, I think there's a difference. I think this is an important thing to think about with this particular concept. I think that when I was younger, and many of us when we're younger, we are trying to prove ourselves. We are trying to prove that we have competency, that we're trying to prove that we have knowledge. We are like little Phaethons trying to prove to our fathers, our mothers, our teachers, that we are worthy of love and respect. And we hunger for that, especially if we came from environments where we may not have gotten that as a young person, through trauma or through whatever, through lack. And that can lead us to trying to take the leap to get that validation sooner. And we hunger for it, right? I'm no different. I hungered for validation. And astrology was a way and music, and to be honest with you, was a way to try to get that validation. And as you get older, you start to realize that you aren't trying to, that it doesn't work to try to impress people. I had a really good friend that told me once, he was like, Spencer, when you sing, I hear that you're trying to impress people rather than express yourself. And that distinction was really floored me. And it really knocked me on my ass. I'm like, hey, you know what, you're right. And it helped me to simplify what I was doing, so that I wasn't trying to be impressive. I was trying to do what was necessary for the song. Same thing with astrology. When we try to impress people with our astrological knowledge, that's us trying to validate our own existence. When you are utilizing the information in service of the person that you are talking to, that's a whole different type of conversation. Sometimes you don't need every single technique. Sometimes you don't talk about every single little nuance. What you do is you're talking to someone about a lived issue and problem that they're experiencing, and utilizing the chart to help guide them through it. This is why I hate cold readings. I'm not a cold reader. We're going to have a discussion. If you're asking about what's going to happen in a reading with me, we're going to talk probably for 10, 15 minutes about your life. and what types of things you experienced, because the chart is going to say different things um, based on the questions that we're asking it. That's the element of divination that comes in with the chart. Um, I think that you could do a cold reading to show somebody something, and that's probably better if you're doing like a horary or something like that. Although horary is an example of actually asking the chart something. Um, but different symbols can mean different things based on what we're asking. So that's another long-winded way of saying when we are utilizing our knowledge in service of others rather than in service of our ego, that's when we have, I think, started to attain mastery. The mastery necessary to feel confident that you can go out in the world and not do harm. Okay? And I think that's another message of the square to these Gemini planets. Oftentimes, when a planet is in Gemini, it is trying to break things down into digestible bits to be able to translate and deliver a message to somebody, which can be very helpful. But the flip side of that, the downside of that, is trying to distill something down to a superficial essence, right? That's one of the modern astrological criticisms of Gemini or Gemini placements is superficiality, where we're glossing over important depth to just get to the point or to get to something that we can say, oh yeah, I know this. I've read one article and now I'm an expert. You know, that's the, it's like, give me the gist of it. In some cases that is okay. In other cases, it can be very harmful. And this is due, I think, to Hermes or Mercury's role as a translator. And we need that. If I used to talk with people who had North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius, and when I used to think more of that nodal axis as we have to grow towards the North Node and incorporate the South Node, and there's still some truth to that, but that's more of a psychological evolutionary perspective, and I think more about the increase in the North Node and the decrease in the South Node and the hunger of the North Node and the releasing of the South Node. I see it more in those terms. And in that case, I want to come to a balance point. But when I was talking to Gemini North Nodes, I would say, hey, it's important for you to learn how to deliver your truth in a way that people can receive. And sometimes that's through listening to their feedback instead of just stating something one way and then not waiting for the interaction and the response. And that's something that I think we can think about with Gemini placements is it's not just about expressing our own opinion. It's about having a discourse so that we can get to that point of understanding. Okay. Winter's here. What's up? Winter says, hi, all joining a little late. Excited to hear about this new moon. Excited you're here, Winter. Devin says, bees are very sensitive to temperature and need to sleep in clusters too to keep warm enough to survive most nights, depending on the climate and region. Yeah, I'm learning more and more about the native pollinators of our area here as well, and how many different species of bees. One of my favorite is a little green iridescent bee. I can't remember the name of it, but it's so beautiful and so tiny, and you're like, oh wow, that's so cool. You see them just flying around everywhere. I'm really enjoying my garden right now. I did a lot of weeding yesterday. It was my mom's birthday yesterday. For those of you that don't know, my mom passed 2 years ago, so I was honoring her memory in my garden yesterday, weeding and creating space for new plants from the sale tomorrow, the native plant sale. And I had on my headphones a good friend of the show here. I don't know if she's listening here today, but Susanna from Finland got me hip to a reading of The Lord of the Rings by Andy Serkis, the actor who portrayed Gollum. And I had that on my headphones, listening to The Lord of the Rings read by Andy Serkis and weeding in the garden. It was just a perfect way, I think, to honor my mom, who loved reading, loved gardening. She had a beautiful, beautiful cottage garden. And yeah, it was just a really nice afternoon, and just seeing all the birds and the pollinators, and it's just a really beautiful time of year, at least in my region. And it helped distract from a lot of the other challenging, news that was going on in the world. And I don't want to go down those rabbit holes today, but wow, there's a lot going on in the collective right now. There's some big changes that were happening. There was something happened yesterday. I can't remember. Did something happen yesterday? uh, yeah, big day for America and for accountability, and all of the other challenges going on globally as well that we're all trying to navigate gracefully, and trying to advocate for peace and for for people being allowed just to be themselves, whoever they are and wherever they are. So let's keep rolling. Bettina says, thank you. Yes. Devin says, a chart has all the information. It would take a lived lifetime to get all the answers. I agree with you, Devin. There's a lot going on in that chart, and I can say many, many, many different things. So we have to ask it the right questions. John Ross is here. What's up, John? Says, it's my birthday. I'm 35. Happy birthday, John. Happy Gemini season to you, and welcome to the channel. Steven's here. Steven says, I made it. Happy Friday. Happy Friday, Steven. Nice to see you. Tracy says, I have a garden connection with my dad. Hugs. Yeah, really beautiful cottage garden that she used to cultivate. And yeah, it's a really nice way to feel like I'm staying connected with her and her memory. Eilish, thank you so much for the super sticker, my friend. Appreciate you. Thank you for supporting the channel and for your participation here today. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. Oh, let's see. Okay, let's keep going. So I think we've broken down the new moon squared Saturn. Now, what other factors do we have involved here? Well, we just recently, as of this new moon, we haven't experienced it yet as of this recording, but we will be coming off of a Venus cazimi. That happens a few days earlier on the 4th at 14 degrees of Gemini. And it's a renewal in the heart of the sun for Venus. So we might be really experiencing a new start when it comes to particularly the Libra and Taurus areas of our chart, the two topical houses that Venus is providing resources for. So this is a really fascinating kind of a renewal of Venus. We've eliminated the dross, the old cycle, and then we're getting ready for a new one. I think in particular, we might see a really nice start in our Libra area because we have the new moon and Venus and the Venus cazimi all making an overcoming trine to our Libra topic. So really pay very close attention, particularly to the Libra area of your chart. You can see here the overcoming trine, because there is a lot of support for that topic right now with Venus being renewed in the heart of the sun. We don't have necessarily a difficult aspect from Saturn, and then Mars is going to be leaving the opposition to the Libra area of our chart as it moves into Taurus. We can talk about that a little bit. That can create its own challenges, but the Libra topic in our life, our relationships, the way we find balance, our sense of justice and fairness is going to be given a boost. So Venus cazimi is an important milestone, an important new start, and it's really kind of baked into this new moon. All right, we also have the first aspect is the moon trining Saturn on the 8th. So this is related to a concept where the moon is escaping what is called the bond. So whenever the moon is within 15 degrees of a conjunction at the new moon or an opposition at the full moon, we say that the moon is under the bond, and a lot of its significations are sort of held in check. So we look to when the moon escapes from that bond and starts to become visible, and the aspect that it makes to whatever planet it first touches, to see what sort of vibe is this moon going to be. Is it square to malefic? Is it trine to malefic? Is it making contact with a benefic planet? Some of those things matter as far as what we're going to be looking at. Now, in this case, it's trining Saturn. So a positive aspect to a potentially challenging planet. This is another reason why we want to respect the boundaries of Saturn. The second decan of Cancer, 19 degrees Cancer, where it makes that aspect, is related to group endeavors in a safe space. Like, so the walled garden, this is the decan of my sun, if you're curious, my natal sun. And this is why I at least aspire towards creating an oasis, a safe space, a place where we can express ourselves and be ourselves and feel like we're able to learn in a way that respects each other's differences. So that might be part of this, respecting each other's differences and creating a safe, nurturing space for you to learn, while also appreciating your limitations with the trine to Saturn, and not getting overconfident in your ability to do that. One of the things I've been, I don't know if obsessed is the right word, maybe it is, but I've been kind of trying to create my own literal walled garden where I have a sense of privacy in my yard. I'm surrounded by people in my living space. I'm at a busy intersection, and there's a lot of houses around, and trying to create, I don't know, a shield of plants just so I can go outside and just hang out and read a book without being interrupted or without being distracted. Distracted, I think, is really the key. I think I may have a little bit of some mild ADD, and being able to go and just be immersed in nature without getting too distracted is an experience that I really enjoy. So this might be something that you're trying to create within your own life as well, and this might be supported by this first aspect. As we move through the new moon, we're going to have Venus coming into a square with Saturn on the 8th. Okay, so let's just take this forward a little bit just to show you how this might unfold. So here is on the outer ring, the square with Saturn to Venus. So any of the challenges that we may have, especially potentially with our relationships or with what we desire, what we love, it's going to run into a need to be realistic. And sometimes you just can't do everything. I've been having a lot of conversations with my partner about all the different things that we want to do and the responsibilities that we have. And I always get a little restless at Gemini season, like intellectually restless. Like I just hunger for some kind of novelty or variety. And you just can't do everything all the time. You have limitations of time, you have limitations of resources, and the suffering that we create for ourselves by feeling like we're missing out on life, a lot of it is self-created, and it's through just not accepting things the way that they are. I'm not saying that we should always do that. There's definitely times where we really need to make important changes in our life and to our societies, etc. But I do think there's a lot of suffering that's created when we overestimate our ability to do so. So be careful of that as Venus makes a square to Saturn at the unfolding of this new moon. And then finally on the 9th, Mars is going to be ingressing into Taurus. So you can see here a few hours after this, Mars is ingressing into Taurus. So this is one that I'm not super looking forward to. This is Mars in its exile, heading into a conjunction with Uranus, and a square with Pluto. It squares Pluto first, and then heads into the conjunction with Uranus. So there probably is something that's coming down the pike in the next week or two where we're probably seeing some abuses of power, more abuses of power, I guess, if I was to, really consider it. We've been seeing a lot of that, I think, in the collective, and potentially escalations of corruption, etc. That one's I'm a little bit nervous about. I think that on a personal level, it may mess with our ability to create a consistent routine. If you're just looking at it from an astrological perspective, Taurus is about unifying body and spirit and saying, all right, my spirit is moving me to do this. I'm going to have my body be in alignment with that. Mars comes and disrupts that. It says the spirit is willing, but the body might not be able to match the same enthusiasm. On the other hand, sometimes what Mars and Taurus will do is it'll get us to the point where we are getting very obsessed with doing something, and it's hard to stop. So it's the problem of inertia. So we have to be real careful when Mars squares Pluto after this new moon about either getting ourselves going and being consistent, or knowing when to stop when our body says, "Oh, we've had enough. It's time to stop now, or you're gonna injure yourself." I had this experience doing some gardening like a year ago or so. Got I wanted to get it done so bad that I pushed my body a little bit too hard. There was one I was trying to dig a compost pit with a number of tree roots, and I was starting to like hammer away at the tree roots, and I was just like getting angry about about them being there, and I ended up injuring my hip. I had a hip injury that I still am dealing with. Like, I think I probably popped some cartilage or something in my hip trying to wrestle with these roots with a shovel, just stomping on it with my foot, right? And so there's consequences to doing that. There's injuries that we can happen if we push ourselves too far. I will also say that Mars in the first decan of Taurus can be related to fear about resources. So there may be some event culturally, like with Pluto and Aquarius 1, the collective, some idealism, the showing of violence or corruption in the collective that causes us to have a lot of fear about our resources moving forward. So just, I guess, prepare yourself for that. And then finally, we have Mars applying to Uranus in July. So I just want to put that on your radar so that you give yourself some extra space around that period of time. Just thinking about the recent news structure, when the verdict in the Trump case was read, Mercury was conjoining Uranus on Donald Trump's midheaven, and when the sentencing is going to be around July 11th, Mars will be applying within 3 degrees to Uranus. So do or take with that information what you will. Like, it's just, I think that there's going to be a lot of people who are getting riled up one way or the other with that at that period of time. So hopefully we'll be able to navigate it peacefully. I'm just making a connection with the collective there. Your mileage may vary personally. Let's see. Just looking through the chat here. Let's see. Tracy says, okay, Libra rising, Leo sun, Gemini moon here. Nice. So maybe Libra, maybe you'll get a little bit of a break there, Tracy, with Mars leaving Aries and all of the nice overcoming trines from Gemini. Steven says Libra is my 11th house, so maybe you'll get some nice news regarding a group that you want to be a part of. Karen says so much FOMO right now for sure. Yeah, really a challenging part of Gemini. One of my favorite myths for Gemini is related to its placement as the 12th house in the Thema Mundi. And the Thema Mundi is a metaphorical teaching tool, natal chart of the world, that shows us how the planets are aspecting one another. And with Gemini in the 12th house, it's very much, to me, an embodiment of the myth of because the 12th house was a time before birth. It's like a pregnant time, basically. And if the first house is birth, the 12th house was on the ascendant by primary motion previously. So this feeling of missing out and exploring all these different pathways is related to the story of a Roman soldier who retained his consciousness after death and was witnessing people choosing lots for the next life to be reincarnated into. And think about all the pressure about choosing a lot, trying to think about what is ethical, what isn't. This was a Platonic story or allegory about, trying to choose an ethical life. This soldier was watching people choose to become dictators at the expense of having to consume their own children at some point. So it's very fascinating to me that Gemini season teaches us that, first of all, that we need to maintain our ethics. There's a fixed star in the middle of Gemini, Aldebaran, associated with a great general. I believe his name was Ahura Mazda. And it talked about being very disciplined and being very ethical. And we've seen people recently, the aforementioned guilty on all 34 counts, Donald Trump, having lapses in his ethical abilities. So there's consequences now that we're seeing that are coming from that. So we really need to choose wisely. We can only do so many things with the hours that we have in a day. And I think that the thing about the FOMO, there will be some opportunities that pass through and that we aren't able to recapture. But there's other ones that we can come back to and circle back to later. And I think that that's a great way to think about it is ask yourself what the priority is now. What's my priority today? How do I bring my highest priority, my most leveraged priority? This is something I've learned from Winning the Week. Something that's going to make your life easier in the future, right? That is going to help you to facilitate forward movement right now. It's not even the most imminent thing. It's something that's going to help you move forward in your life. And then you can circle back around to the other things. Julene, what's up, Julene? Says, hi, Spencer, popping in for a bit. Birthday on Tuesday, so paying attention to this new moon carefully. Happy birthday, happy early birthday, Julene. It's nice to see you here. You have your birthday on the Venus Cazimi, so hopefully many happy returns for you, my friend. Devin says, I'm excited for the hostilities of Mars to slow down, given the weapons of Venus instead of his favored tools. Yeah, that's a great point, Devin. I believe Devin last live stream last week pointed out that when the insurrection was happening on January 6th, I believe it started to calm down right as Mars moved out of the final degree of Aries and into Taurus. So maybe we hopefully will see something similar where we see the reduction in Mars's power to be able to harm, like where we're seeing it being nerfed a little bit. Imagine Mars being given food or, I don't know, like pillows to fight with instead of, semi-automatics. Like that is the difference, I think, between those. Now, that being said, we sometimes the zodiac speaks very literally. So one of the things I'm have my eyes and ears perked up for is seeing some misfortune come through the literalness of like cattle, of cows. We have the potential for, I think, avian flu spreading through the meat industry, etc. And I have a feeling. I hope that this isn't the case because I love animals and I want our food systems to be secure. But I have a feeling that there's going to be some more news coming out about avian flu and its effect on the cattle industry and things of that nature, where we're seeing Mars squaring Pluto and the exposure of a corruption, the exposure of something that's fallen into disrepair that needs to be fixed. I really think that that's really what Pluto is showing us, something that needs to be transmuted or transformed. Okay. Well, Steven traded in their car for a SUV. Oh, that's nice, Steven. I never fear of missing anything. It was not meant to be for me if I missed it. Good, Stephen. I'm glad. I admire your confidence. Tracy is saying happy birthday. We got nice birthday wishes for Julene. Stephen's in a new ride. Julene has Jupiter on Aldebaran. Okay, so acting in an ethical manner will bring good fortune to you, hopefully. Let's see. Stephen says, the question that helps me move forward is, do I want to be right or do you want to be happy? Yeah, I think that's a great way to avoid challenges, right? I agree with that. Julian says, what is or do you have a take on Venus star point at 14 degrees of Gemini? Are you talking about the Cazimi? We just kind of went over the Cazimi, Julian. If I'm gonna stay true to my be done by 4 p.m. Eastern time, I gotta start moving on to the rising signs pretty soon. But basically, renewal in the heart of the sun for Venus, and being able to embrace something that we want to learn. I think being close to that fixed star Rigel, saying, you know what? I really would love to learn this new thing. I would love to incorporate this new knowledge into my life. And I think it'll have positive benefits for Taurus and Libra areas of your life. Devin's keeping me on track. 56 minutes left. Thanks, Devin. Appreciate you, friend. Okay. So, I mean, we're doing the best that we can, right? We're trying to have a conversation, but also illuminate the aspects and things of that nature. It's a delicate balance to do, and doing it live it's a tightrope to walk sometimes. And I very much enjoy the interaction with all of you, and I want everyone who is on and participating in this channel, which is a huge honor, by the way, to feel seen and heard. So if I don't get to every single comment in the chat, it is not personal. It's just more in the interest of time, and I hope that everyone feels seen and heard on the channel as much as possible. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a little bit more about the second decan of Gemini before we move on to the rising signs. So here's Gemini II, and we have the Nine of Swords popping up as our tarot card syncretized with this decan. And it's one that is a little bit funky, right? We've got a Gemini II decan tarot card with somebody kind of awake at night, having a little bit of a panic attack or some anxiety or a nightmare, etc. Maybe remembering a challenging event that is alluded to here at the carving on the bed, which if you can't really see it, but there's someone stabbing someone like here, and someone like perishing. So anxiety, irreconcilable thoughts, nightmares, and insomnia. Yesod and Yetzirah, mind creating reality. That is important. I think that that's a really interesting way of looking at this new moon, because Yesod is the Kabbalistic tree of life sephira associated with the moon, or the birth canal. You can see in Yesod, it's like filtering into a sephira, or kind of almost sort of like a chakra center or something like that. It's not one-to-one, but it's filtering into something called Malkuth, which is manifestation. So this is a time before manifestation where our minds are very active and saying, well, what do we want to really manifest? And it fits with the whole myth of It fits with, like, we got to explore a little bit and really get clear about what we want. And sometimes that can produce some indecision. This decan, I think, is a Mars ruled decan. So we can feel the weight of the choices in front of us. So we have to be careful not to project our anxiety, our fear, our FOMO onto others. Projection is a really important theme, I think, with Gemini. That's talked about quite a bit in Liz Green's work, especially the Astrology of Fate. So we want to be able to own our shadow and own our gifts as well. We don't want to project our good things on other people too. We want to own our own abilities, but then we want to be clear about our weaknesses so that we're not externalizing it and making it someone else's fault all the time. This is something that we're seeing in the news this week is we have someone who can never take responsibility for their actions, and it's always someone else's fault, even when they've been found guilty in a court of law, unanimously by a jury of their peers. It's quite incredible to witness sometimes the levels that people will go to project their negativity onto others. So be very careful of that moving forward. Destructive thinking and mental torture. They talk about in the Picatrix, the Latin Picatrix, about a figure wearing a helmet of lead. And so this is where we're banging around thoughts in our brain, and we're thinking about, oh man, this is a really difficult issue that we're dealing with, and a lot of it was we're creating our own misery through not allowing ourselves to quiet down our monkey mind. I think overthinking things is definitely a part of this decan for sure. Merciless speech and trash talk. This isn't one to really be aware of, especially because it's a Mars-ruled decan. We have to be very, very careful of how we speak to others, how we utilize our words, and are we going to uplift others, or are we going to tear other people down? And I generally try to aspire towards lifting other people up, although we all fall short of the glory sometimes, and we have to be aware of when we are falling away from creating positivity in the world. Inner turmoil projected onto the other. Again, we just discussed that. So some questions you can ask yourself. Are your thoughts becoming a prison? That's referring back to the helmet of lead. Are you caught in the suffering between regret or fear? A good way of explaining FOMO, fear of missing out. Is your inner turmoil causing you to lash out? This one's important, right? Is your own indecision, your own ambiguity, your own questioning causing you to want to find certainty by making one of those positions wrong? Oftentimes when we just feel like we don't have the answers, we have to demonize another way of thinking so that, or another way of being to make ourselves feel better. And that's when it becomes toxic. Let's see. Can you explore within for the roots of your pain? That's a good one. When we're feeling like lashing out, maybe asking ourselves if something's really bothering us. I know this is true for me. Sometimes something will bother me and I will really have to look in the mirror and say, what is it that I'm afraid of becoming if I'm lashing out on something? What is it that I am trying to avoid by externalizing this part of myself that I feel maybe isn't well integrated? So ask yourself those questions as well. And then how can you break out of repetitive thought patterns? And how can you reunite your severed halves of self, referring back to Cybele, right? Or the daimon or spirit of this decan. And again, we have Aldebaran and Rigel in this particular area of the zodiac. So we have one where we have to pursue knowledge ethically, and we have one where we might have to share what we're learning on a path to humility. Okay. Julene, thank you so much for the super sticker, my friend. Thank you. Appreciate you, Julene. And again, happy birthday, and I hope everything works out for you. Julene says, no worries. I was referring to the theory that some astrologers feel significantly, such as Ariel Gutman. I'll have to look at that more in depth. I have Ariel Gutman's mythological astrology book, or mythic astrology. I don't know if I have her Venus star point book. So it seems like you're not referring to the Kazemi, but a different technique. And it's one that I will admit that I am not an expert on at this point. So this is part of the Saturn square with Geminis. Instead of trying to pull something out of your ass, you say, I don't know that yet, but there's always opportunity to learn more in the future. Rachel says, Spencer, I'm always in awe at your ability to respond so consistently to the comments here while weaving a very complex, comprehensive thread from the transits. I do not have that Gemini dexterity. Sometimes I wonder if I have that dexterity, Rachel, but I appreciate that comment. I appreciate that validation. And maybe it is a Venus and Gemini second decan ability, being able to take all the different voices and unify it and harmonize it into something digestible. At least I hope that's the case. We do tend to go a little bit long sometimes, but I'm getting better at it. And I'm getting better at kind of filtering through different comments in the chat, ones that I feel are adding to the conversations and ones that may be taking us off track. And again, none of your comments are invalid in this chat. It's just sometimes ones will be taking us down a rabbit hole that we don't have time to go down. Mr. Hindsight says, Venus star point is Adam Gainsbourg. I'll have to look into it, friend. Again, I'll plead my ignorance there. Rachel says, you really do. You engage in the community in a very sincere, thoughtful way. It's a lot for one human. I agree. And I will say sometimes at the end of the live streams, I'm just completely drained and I need a day to recover because it's a performance. It's a symphony where we are all co-creating a symphonic experience, which I think honestly is somewhat unique. Sometimes you have people that will break down transits and speak from their own knowledge base, but here we were really trying to weave together, like you were saying, different voices, different perspectives, different questions, and still have it be this legible, kind of thing. But it's a process, right? Steven says, gotta go. Have a great weekend. All don't let the drama enter in is my advice for this energy. I agree, Steven. And have a good weekend, my friend. And good luck with your SUV. Hope it serves you well, friend. Painted Turtle is here. Says this Gemini 2 slide is very on point. Chiron native here. Yeah, Painted Turtle, and I hope you're doing well, friend. I believe Painted Turtle was in one of our book clubs, so I miss you, friend, and hope you're doing well. And yes, the having Chiron in this placement could be feeling a wound in trying to explore all of the different avenues, and maybe feeling like it's difficult to integrate all of the different things that you want to do in your life. So just hang in there, friend, and with this new moon activating that Chiron, just try to be gentle with yourself, I guess, is my advice. Keshma Suri is here. Says, can you check tarot for myself as per my marriage regarding... I can if you reach out for a reading, Keshma. You can find that on spencermichaud.com at the Book Now button. You could ask you could sign up for an oracle reading, which is one question where I will be happy to take a look at that for you. Okay, friends, let's keep going. Let's do this. We are probably at about the halfway point here, and this is a great opportunity for you to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's a really easy way to support the channel. It really does help get more eyes and ears on the work that I do, which in turn helps us to have a more diverse conversation, and it really enriches the work that we do here. So also take this time to stretch out, get yourself a little drink of water. You know, it's really important to move your body, especially when we're doing a lot of heavy thinking, heavy lifting, a lot of dexterous movements mentally. You got to get your body in alignment with all of that. Get the shoulders all worked out. It's getting warm in here, friends. I don't have my air conditioning on today, so the heat is, I have to be careful not to get dehydrated. I will admit, my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, brought me home this incredible corned beef sandwich from the farmer's market last night. And it was from a food truck that they hired to, she runs a farmer's market here in Michigan, and they have these amazing food trucks that rotate through, and this lovely, lovely, lovely woman who makes homemade corned beef had these beautiful thick sandwiches, and Tanya brought me home one, and I smashed it, and it was just very salty, though, I will say. So I'll try to get rehydrated after a corned beef sandwich night. So, but I digress. Yeah, food trucks. Food trucks are amazing. There's so many just amazing chefs out there, and food trucks, I think, give people an opportunity to share their gifts and their food and their nourishment with the world without having a ton of overhead, which restaurants they could be a lot of overhead for sure. Rachel says, come to Ireland, 13 Celsius today and falling. I'm off to get socks. I just got new socks, Rachel. I got some Federe socks for summer, ankle socks. But anyway, okay, friends. Let's see here. Let's start diving into it. We're going to bring this, let's go to the rising signs, and we will figure out what this has in store for us. What do you say? Let's get all the way to our first slide, which is Gemini, and we'll bring it to the screen. There it is. We'll make it bigger for those of you who can't see it. You don't need to see my ever-increasing pink face as it gets warmer in here. You don't need to see my sweaty face as we go through this. So, Gemini rising. We are starting off with the rising sign that the sun is moving into, or that the sun is passing through, I should say. So, Gemini rising, you're first. So this is a new moon for you, Gemini rising, in your first house. It is a big one for you Gemini risings, where you may feel like there's so many new things that you could explore. Jupiter's just moved into your first house. You got Mercury moving into your first house here. Venus has just made a cazimi in your first house, which is super exciting for you. There's all sorts of different parts of your life starting to come together, except there's this one little thing. Saturn is making a square from your 10th house. And it is saying, hey there, Gemini. Hey, Gemini rising. Guess what? You might want to slow down. And there's a reason for that. And it probably has something to do with either an authority figure in your life, which the 10th house can represent, with a career challenge with a lot of responsibilities either at your job or at whatever you do that you're known for publicly. It could just be putting a lot of pressure and stress on you. And it is very important, Gemini rising, not to overestimate or overpromise when you are putting yourself out into the world. There's probably been a lot of changes in your public life. Maybe there was a career or some sort of public persona that ended, and you're trying to maybe find out what the new public persona is. But take your time with that. You don't have to be everything to everyone all at once. It's very important to learn the skills necessary to be a responsible steward of whatever you're trying to do. Okay, this is the key. Like, remember. I think this is the key theme for this moon, is when we are utilizing our gifts, our talents, our intellects in service of others, we don't need to impress them. We just need to do what the work requires. And I think Saturn is saying, hey, if you want to make a new start, if you want to, be of service out into the world, you can't overpromise, because what you do when you overpromise and you can't deliver is you make it difficult to gain trust. Okay, I think that's the key thing. This is why, to be honest with you, friends, like, I think I've seen more modern astrological dumping on Gemini than any other sign. Like, people seem to get frustrated with Geminis. They can be wonderful and they can really break your heart. And part of it is, I think, first of all, I think this sign is extraordinarily misunderstood. But there are some truths to some of the cliches where there is something that is promised that is not delivered. And I think oftentimes what a Gemini type, rising, sun, etc., Venus, myself, I've really had trouble with this, is we don't like disappointing people. And Gemini is known for being able to deliver the message in the way that the person can receive. On the negative side, it can be telling someone what they want to hear rather than telling them the truth. Okay. And it is, Sagittarius's opposing force and Jupiter's opposing force that says, hey, it's important to be true, at least, essence-wise, to the truth. Okay, there's all sorts of different ways to deliver a truth, but we have to be rooted in truth. And knowing your limitations can help create trust between you and whoever you're trying to connect with. Because ultimately, Gemini is a sanguine air sign. Sanguine is a temperament quality in traditional astrology that is related to a planet or a sign being, in this case, sanguine, being warm and moist, warm and wet, okay? And that quality, that warmth, speeds things up. The wet quality brings things together. So what Gemini is really doing with that sanguine temperament is trying to bring people together socially, intellectually, but but it quickens things. Whereas like Virgo, dry, cold and dry, slowing down, separating things out into categories rather than mashing them up. I really feel like Gemini tries to mash things together, whereas Virgo is saying, no, wait a minute. We have to separate these out into categories. So just be careful of the over delivery, Gemini rising, and have fun with things, but take care of your responsibilities as well. Lisa says, Gemini rising, Venus perfection year. I just had my second Saturn return, wondering if what this Saturn square will bring. Well, Lisa, I hope that it will bring you knowledge, wisdom, and an ability to make a realistic new start in your public life as well. You know, by being able to take care of your responsibilities, but not overpromising and doing what you can do rather than what you wish you could do, but might not be ready for yet. It's okay to take your time, Geminis, is what I will say. Remember, Rigel is only the first step in a long journey of knowledge and wisdom. I'm really appreciating this, listening to the Fellowship of the Ring. For those of you joining late, I've just started listening to the Fellowship of the Ring read by Andy Serkis, which is an incredible way to experience that book, because he has an amazing voice, and I thank my friend Susanna from Finland for turning me on to that, because it's been really enjoyable. But it's a long journey to take the ring to Mordor. You can't just, wish it. And you can't overestimate your ability. There's going to be some setbacks. There's going to be things where you need to persevere. And that I think is the real lesson here, Lisa, is perseverance is important. And respecting Saturn's connection with time is also very important. You want to stay connected with the limitations of time. Okay. Julian says, under promise and over deliver. I have learned that over the years. I have Saturn squared the sun, North Node, ascendant natally to do this, to do that or suffer. Yes, Julian, you're preaching to the choir here, friend. I have so many ideas for classes and things like that and things I want to do, but I'm just really trying to do one thing this summer and do it well. I'm not saying that I won't offer some more things this summer, but I'm being very, very intentional and thinking it through as to whether I'm going to be able to do it to the best of my ability. And I feel really good about the book club right now. So if for those of you who are saying, I want to work with Spencer, I want to work with a group, that's a great way to engage with, I think, a lot of the essence qualities that run through this group and myself. Being able to connect with nature is a really important part of it's something I'm really passionate about. And also being able to unify our lived experience with the astrological movements. It's just really, I'm just really fascinated to see what we do with it. Okay, Gemini rising. I hope that will guide you on the path. Let's keep going. Here is Cancer rising. Cancer rising. Whoops. Well, Cancer rising. There it is. You have a new moon in the 12th house. And this is, of course, the 12th house is the Thema Mundi Gemini sign. So if you're a Cancer rising, congratulations. You have the same rising sign as the universe, according to Hellenistic scholars. But what I think that does on some level is it magnifies some of the benefits and challenges of a particular house placement. And when planets move through that, you're going to feel these transits probably very intensely. So what does that mean for you, Cancer rising? I think what it means is that this is a really important time to be gentle with yourself. To work through any anxiety that you may have that we saw in the Nine of Swords about imagined pathways. The truth of the matter with this full moon, or new moon, excuse me, I want to say full moon so bad today, but it's the new moon. With this new moon is that we are going to want to pursue more paths than we are able to. And this may be true lifelong for you Cancer risings, is there may be a lot of different pathways that you want to pursue that just can't all be done simultaneously. I would say also that one of the challenging parts of having Gemini in the 12th house for you Cancer risings and maybe Cancer suns in general. I relate to this a little bit. I have some mitigating factors, but communication could be a problem. Oftentimes, a Cancerian type will feel something and expect someone else to feel the same way. And they're like, well, I feel this strong, strong emotion. How can this other person possibly not feel it or see it or whatever? And oftentimes, a Cancer type will leave something unsaid that actually needs to be verbalized and communicated, and not just in a one-way interaction, in a way where there has been an exchange with that person. I know this was true for me as a young person. There are times when I just can't stop talking or I can't stop thinking. But there's other times when I'm really feeling really hurt, or when I'm feeling really scared, I just clam up. Like as a Cancer sun, I will go in the internal space and I will get really, really quiet. If I'm angry, I get really quiet. There may be a blustery Leo rising, admonition. is that how we say that? Where I would roar for a minute, but then I get very cold and very distant really quickly. And I think that that's a quality that may be highlighted with Cancer rising with this stack up on the 12th house. How do you communicate your truth? How do you manage all of the different competing interests in your life? How do you find solitude? How do you find enough space so that you can nurture what's most important to you? I had a lovely Cancer rising friend who I believe just had a child, and I'm imagining that their head is probably spinning right now, trying to figure out all the different new things that they have to work through on very little sleep, I'm imagining. And how do you get that time and sacred space for yourself when you have another little being that wants to be attached to you at all times? It's not an easy answer. It's not an easy thing to reconcile. That's another point of this new moon. Is there some competing interests that are just irreconcilable? Okay. And we have to be okay with there being some ambiguity. Gemini and Mercury in particular talks about creating sacred doubt, creating disruption on some level. And we have to be able to live with that gray area. One of the things that I really strive for on this channel, that I've received my fair share of criticism about, is that I hesitate to make black and white statements about anything, really. I very much live in the liminal spaces in the gray area of life, because I've made the mistake of making declarative statements about things and then later being very wrong about them. And it's not something that I relish doing. And I see more and more and more how divisive the world has gotten because people are making declarative statements and pitting one group against another and saying this person is wrong, this thing is wrong. And that is something that I hope to avoid, because I think that there is always room to learn more. There's always room to understand something from multiple facets and perspectives. So again, as a Cancer rising, you are given an opportunity now to be able to hold that ambiguity without necessarily having to solve it. I think that's the key right now. Now, Saturn is making this overcoming square, Cancer rising, from your 9th house. So this is probably bringing you some limitations in relationship to your long distance travel. Like maybe there's a trip that you want to take, because maybe this is the time of year. I know for me personally, when the sun is in the 12th house, it's an awesome time for a vacation where you can, and not like one where you're doing a million things. Like for me, a vacation is like, let me go into the woods for a while and shut my brain off. Okay, that's a 12th house vacation, all right? But there might be something where you're desiring to have that space, but there could be some limitations in that with Saturn in the ninth house. Maybe your belief systems are changing. Maybe there's a belief that was shown to you to be completely false, that where you have had to really change the way that you look at something, with the ninth house being related to more of belief system. Maybe there's a legal issue that's challenging you as well, Cancer rising, with the ninth house being related to the law. And that could be putting a lot of limitations on your ability to kind of get away from it all. So hang in there. I guess the good news, one good news, is that Mars is going to leave your 10th house. For some of you, that could have been a very productive time. For others, it could have been a lot of conflict there. So this could be something that could be starting to alleviate some of that pressure from your public-facing self, potentially. Full and new moons are always pretty intense for Cancer and Cancer risings, because Cancer is a sign that is ruled by the moon. So hang in there, Cancer. You got this. Let me see here. Let's see. Painted Turtle says, Theme of Monday rep here. As for feelings, I find I reflect the feeling of the person before they feel it. Before they uncover the mental part of their experience to feel the feeling themselves, I speak it. I can relate to that, Painted Turtle. I can relate to that. I tend to be very in tune with body language. So one other thought about Cancer is that the crab as a symbol is more often than not a prey animal. And they have very attuned senses because there's so many things that are trying to eat them. And a lot of people who have Cancer placements, suns, rising signs, etc., had to develop very highly attuned senses, mostly a lot of the time because of growing up in difficult circumstances. And for me, like, I had to read people's body language to know if a parent or an authority figure was going to be sad or angry or happy on that particular day, because they weren't always communicating those things to me, and it would just take me by surprise. So I learned to tune into people's body language and see not only what they were saying, but how they were saying it. A lot of us have had people, family members that just weren't honest with us. There was trust issues, right? My own personal experience of this is, I had 5 different step parents growing up. My parents went through multiple marriages. So somebody saying, this is going to be our new life, you tend to be, after the third or fourth time, you tend not to trust them, and you try to see, is this person feeling this way or that or whatever. So important to verbalize what you're feeling, and don't make assumptions based on your feelings as well, because that is the negative part of that, is saying, hey, I feel this, I'm seeing this body language, but it can be dangerous to assume that your feeling is, it's not dangerous to assume that there's something there, but it's dangerous to assume what the other person is feeling based on how their body language is making you feel. Does that make sense? So I think this is a really important distinction to make, and always ask for clarification. I go through this with my Capricorn rising partner, who Saturnian folks can be very, I have to choose my words carefully. She might be listening right now. They can be a little bit distant, and they can, Saturn was said to be a deceiver. They can mask very easily. They want to hide their feelings a lot. So they can be very inscrutable. So sometimes when I'm trying to decipher, what is she feeling here? I know something's wrong, but I can't figure it out. Sometimes you have to really ask rather than assuming what they're feeling. Devin says the difference between sanguine and melancholic. Yeah, exactly. Rachel says Mars in the 10th was odd. Public self disappeared owing to domestic challenges. Interesting. So it's Mars being in the opposite house to your domestic 4th house. Absolutely. Winter says, a Cancer rising, I'm curious to see how my natal Mercury in Sagittarius will interact with this new moon. Well, with Mercury in your 6th house in Sagittarius in exile, Um, there might be some challenges with work that you have to do versus, wanting to take some time for yourself and find solitude potentially. Maybe it will activate something in regards to that. Uh, there could be just a lot of different directions that you're splitting your attention towards and you need to focus. That could be another part of it too. Or also could be an issue with a sibling winter, with Mercury ruling your third house and your 12th house, with a sibling potentially being a source of challenge, of maybe an undermining influence potentially. So this might be a good opportunity to have a good conversation with someone like that. Lisa says stoic Capra. Yeah, it's a great balance, I will say. Having your partner be the opposite rising sign to your natal sun can be really nice. Like they can, you know, uh, provide some of the things that you lack, but there's also a lot of having to communicate through your differences. Um, but that's what relationships are. They're learning experiences. Rachel says, that makes sense about assuming, interpreting. I was trying to articulate that too. Yeah, absolutely, Rachel. Sometimes we just have to let people's feelings be and realize they will work through them in their own time and way. Sage advice, Rachel. Absolutely. I've tried to work on that myself. I tend to be like, this is the curse of a Taurus moon and a Cancer sun. Is a lot of the times, because we're sensitive to the way that other people feel, when someone's feeling off, it disturbs your own inner equilibrium. And the Taurus moon part of me says, if someone's feeling bad, I can't feel good myself. And I will, all you Taurus moons out there, see if this resonates with you, but I will sometimes get angry if someone else is mad, or if they're struggling, because I'm like, how dare they interrupt my good inner vibe, and it's not fair. It's totally not fair. And it's something that, a weakness that I've really tried to work on is allowing other people to have their negative feelings without feeling like I have to try to fix it so that I can feel better. Does that make sense? And try to catch yourself doing that if you're trying to do that. Painted Turtle says, I always appreciate your insight and experience, Spencer. You turn lights on part of the room that aren't lit when I'm thinking on some of these aspects. Oh, good. I'm happy to hear that, friend. And just good luck with this new moon there. Okay, let's keep going. Let's go to Leo rising. So Leo risings, what's up, my fellows? My fellow Leo risings, my Brian Fellows. Remember Brian Fellows? That was Tracy Morgan on SNL. He was like a Steve Irwin type of character. He was like, Brian Fellows. He always had some crazy thing happen with an animal. It's funny. Just a loose chain of association. So Leo rising, you have a new moon in your 11th house. This is a great time to start a group endeavor potentially, and it is a lot of focus on creating a new type of relationship with people that you share values with. I know in my own personal Leo rising experience, this is the new moon right before I start my new guided group study / book club, and welcome in a new group of people. And I'm excited about that. I got my eye on Saturn in my 8th house there, related to challenges around resources of others and like debt, etc. I am offering payment plans for the guided group study summer class, and hopefully everything works out well with that, with Saturn in my 8th house related to debt, etc. But for you Leo risings out there, you're getting a renewal of Venus in the heart of the sun in your 11th house. It could really be helpful for your career, 10th house, and your learning processes with the 3rd house, and your daily habits and routines, etc. Just be very careful not to overextend yourself when it comes to shared resources with other people. Don't assume that you have all the money in the world to do whatever you want to do. You're going to have to get real with your taxes or with your shared resources, with debt, etc. That could be part of this new moon for you as well. Mars is going to move out of your ninth house and into your 10th too. So keep an eye on Mars stirring up a little bit of trouble in the 10th house potentially. Just with your career, there could be some starts and stops, and you have to deal with the problem of inertia, right? Of really kind of feeling out how to stay consistent with your energy level, which isn't always a huge challenge for Leo. We tend to be fairly consistent with our energy level being a fixed sign, but there could be a challenge here with like, not knowing when to stop or not knowing when to, how to get started with something. There also something to keep an eye on is that Mars will square Pluto over an angular house for you at the 10th and the 7th house. So just be careful about your anger and it being publicized. I'll have to keep my eyes on that myself about publicly declaring something I'm irritated or upset about. I try not to do that anyway. Most of us Leo risings, if we have the midheaven in Taurus, don't really enjoy public displays of discontent. We have plenty of that in our home lives with the IC in Scorpio. There's plenty of crisis in our families generally, that our careers, we'd like that to be peaceful. That happens to be true for myself. I had enough crisis in my family growing up and into my adulthood in my domestic life that I just wanted my career to be something where people just express their love and appreciation for one another, or we could agree on things. Music was something people could mostly agree on. Creativity and astrology, it is a little bit more challenging to get agreement on that, but hopefully we've cultivated that here. But it's not always easy. You can't avoid criticism, I think, as a Leo rising. I'm just speaking to you Leo risings. We don't really enjoy being criticized, I will say that. There is a part of us that is very, very afraid of being embarrassed. I think that's one of the things that honestly motivates me the most is I fear being embarrassed. It causes me to study harder. It causes me, when I was doing music as a job, it caused me to practice obsessively, because the last thing I wanted to do was get up and start performing and then make a mistake. And we can psychoanalyze that how you will, but that is often a Leo story. Same thing with expressing our knowledge. We want to feel competent. We want to feel like we're shining our light and things of that nature and providing clarity. It is a growth process to be able to admit when you don't know something. This was something that was hard for me as a younger person. I felt like I had to know something or that I was failing. My daughter, who is a Leo rising, has gone through this too. 5-year-old her always felt like she had the answer to something. And I was like, it's okay that you don't know this. This is just part of learning something, right? And as we get older, it's easier for us to say, you know what, I don't know that. I don't know. I'm going to have to go look at that. I'm going to have to go study a little bit more. It doesn't mean that we're bad people if we can't, if we don't know something in that moment. So this is an opportunity to start a new learning cycle or a teaching cycle potentially, and being open to being changed by it, to know that this is a first step in a journey of humility. And for some Leo risings, they've been humbled a lot in their life. For others, they've had it, they've lived on easy street, and that humility is a little bit harder to come by. Just don't take for granted Saturn making that overcoming square from your 8th house. Be very careful of overextending yourself with your resources. I'm telling myself this in regards to, I think, some of my gardening projects. I think this is part of it too. Like, I have this vision. My mom set a high standard. She had a really beautiful garden that honestly took many years and lots of resources to cultivate. And that's my vision of what I want my space to look like, not realizing that it took decades to make it look like that. And trying to attain some kind of standard may not be realistic. I'm having to learn as a gardener that I can do a little bit this year, then I can do a little bit the next year when the resources become replenished, rather than zeroing out my bank account to like have something look like something right away. So this might be advice for you, Leo rising too, is don't overextend yourself. Realize that you can do something to the best of your ability for this cycle, and then there will be another cycle, and then there will be another cycle, etc. Okay. Let's see, checking in with our Leo risings in the chat. Well, Triple Wilder the first says, "Oh my God, this is real talk. I'm a Cancer rising with triple Gemini partner. Sensitivities. Oh boy." So that's, yeah. Cancers with Geminis, I've experienced this in the past with my mom and others. A lot of times we make assumptions about, them understanding what we're feeling, and they want nothing more than the exchange. And if we don't have that conversation with them, they can feel like they're not receiving their love language, which is actually communication. And Cancer feels like, oh, you don't understand me. And really a lot of it will be solved by just verbalizing your feelings, but then also just being with one another without necessarily just holding hands or something. I don't know, something like that. I think that's a good happy medium between those two energies. Uranus ascending says, "Leo rising, I'm always aware of how much money I don't have." Oh man. Well, I think one day at a time, right? I think that the way that we've been raised as Leo risings, I think this is something that people don't understand about Leo risings, is because of Scorpio being on the 4th house, a lot of Leo risings have crisis in their roots and in their family, and that they didn't feel safe in their homes, within their families, and that can extend to feeling like you don't have the resources that you need as well. And uncovering that and diving into those depths to heal that can be can really start moving you forward in your life. Uranus ascending says, "Natal Mars in Taurus takes a lot for me to explode with anger." Yeah, I hear you. My father's a Taurus Mars in the 1st house, and he had an extremely long fuse, but when he got mad, he got really mad. But he is for the most part, a gentle soul. He wasn't really a violent person. He just would, he was kind of a whiner. Like if he got mad, he would just start whining about something. But I definitely pushed his buttons. Like, I had a lot of questions, and he was pretty good about answering most of them. But I think there was times he was just like, "I am done with your questions right now." Like, why don't you go do something else? And I can relate to that feeling for sure. Uranus ascending says, "Yes, avoiding embarrassment." It's really like I'm not saying you're a whiner. Uranus ascending. Totally, this is just my own experience. But Mars and Taurus, I think, if you have that placement natally, I think a lot of that is dealing with inertia, right? A lot of it is, you're saying Cancer moon, hold a lot in. My dad's a Scorpio moon, so he has the Mars moon opposition, so that's probably part of it. But I digress. I think that, where was I at? I was on a train of thought. Mars and Taurus. If you have Mars and Taurus in your chart, friends, mostly the challenge is about how do you get yourself moving and how do you stop, right? Uranus ascending says, "Sloth is my spirit animal." That makes a lot of sense for Mars and Taurus, because Mars and Taurus people don't really move at the pace of everyone else. They move at their own pace. They move at the pace that's comfortable for them. And sometimes life requires them to move faster than they are comfortable with. And they will resist that. And they will say, "I'm not comfortable with that. I'm going to resist. I'm going to dig my heels in." My father was like this. If you tried to rush him with anything, it just wasn't happening. And I've inherited a little bit of that myself. So the key is, how do you get yourself moving when life requires it? And then how do you slow down when you need to stop? That's the real key with Mars and Taurus for everyone, is how do you have a consistency of pace? Because oftentimes they can be tireless workers, or they can be slothful in the negative sense of the word, where just getting them up off the couch, getting their ass moving is real struggle. Uranus ascending says, "Yep, my own pace, but stay out of my way once I get going." Absolutely. And totally confirming what we've been talking about here today, you're ascending, is it's not that Mars and Taurus isn't a hard worker. It's just that they have their own time frame. And if they're ready to work, they are ready to work. And if they're not, hell or high water isn't going to move them. Same thing with a bull. That's kind of what we're looking at there, right? Okay, so Leo rising, great time to join in group endeavors. Just be very careful about your shared resources. Try not to have overconfidence or overextend yourself. Be very mindful that Mars is moving into your 10th house, squaring Pluto immediately as it moves into Taurus, and then it will be conjoining Uranus. So just be very careful about your anger bubbling out in different ways, and try to keep your equilibrium moving forward. Sunny D is here. Says, I have Mars in Taurus, and if I raise my voice, I have been pushed too far, and somebody is about to have something explained to them. Yeah, I hear you. I think that's the key with anything Taurus is, and I say we because I have a moon in Taurus, we would love nothing more than to be left alone and to be able to feel comfortable and peaceful. It's a Venus ruled sign, okay? But we all have our limits. Like, I have noticed that Taurus placements are great at enduring things to a point. They will not say anything and endure and like just say, okay, I'm still good, I'm still good, I'm still good. And if you get to a certain point with the Taurus folks, then they're like, all right, you've disturbed my inner equilibrium enough that I'm going to, then that's when the bull in the china shop comes out, right? That's when it becomes like, man, like it can be really, it's not great. I've seen it in myself too. Like I've worked very hard to maintain my center, but we all have our breaking points. Don't, for the love of God, do not underestimate your Taurus placement people, that they aren't capable of anger or violence or whatever, because they absolutely are. And it's scary when it comes out because we don't expect it, because usually they're just so chill, or we are so chill. So a good exercise in learning to manage yourself so that it doesn't get to the point where you are exploding, where it becomes volcanic. And I think really here's the key. Touch some grass. I mean, get your hands in the dirt. Go out in the woods. Have a nice meal. Get some sleep. Hug somebody. Those are the simple things that calm the wild beast down. Turn the Minotaur back into, the Ferdinand or whatever. All right. Yeah, thank you, friend. So that's what we got for Leo rising. Let's keep going. I think I'm not on track, but that's okay. We're going down some good avenues today. I still have some energy, but it's almost 4 o'clock here, friends. So I'm gonna have to start going a little faster. So I apologize to some of you who I go faster through when I start to see the clock ticking. But here's the thing. It's a rotation system. So if you feel the short end of the stick, just wait another season, and then you'll be first, and I will have more energy for that. So Virgo rising, we've got the new moon in the 10th house with a square to Saturn in the 7th. All right. So Saturn's in the overcoming position from your partnership house, Virgo rising, and you have a huge stellium stack up in your 10th house of praxis. Praxis is a fancy way of saying action and the actions that you take out in the world and what you're known for. So there is a lot of energy right now in your 10th house, your public-facing house. So there is a lot of Saturn in the 7th house, sort of giving you the slowdown, the whoa, wait a minute, from potentially a partner. It could be a business partner. It could be a romantic partner. It could be an open enemy. Like that's another thing that 7th house represents. Could be someone that you're openly in conflict with that is putting a lot of pressure on your career, business, public-facing persona, etc. So be careful to not underestimate some of the challenges that could come through that. it could also be that there's an ending that's coming. Like a lot of Virgo risings probably at this point in time are either solidifying a relationship or coming to the end of one. And that could put a lot of pressure on every part of your life, really. When we're going through relationship changes, it puts a lot of stress and pressure on us. But this could also be where you're having to work within your own limitations. Now, Virgo is not generally known for exceeding limitations. I would say that for the most part, I have noticed that instead of trying to do something too big, they just try to do the one thing too perfectly, right? They're trying to do that one project to the point where by constantly trying to refine a process, you can end up destroying it. So be conscious and aware of that there will just be some things that need to be returned to the earth that can't be fixed, that can't be perfected, and allow yourself the grace to say, I've done enough. It is time to send it out into the world, okay? This is a huge lesson that I learned as a musician in the studio. The last time Jupiter was in Gemini, I was in the music studio. And holy cow, that was triggering my Virgo stellium like crazy, because I could hear what I wanted it to sound like, and I could hear what it sounded like. And the gap between those two things was painful. Okay. And especially Virgo, here's the key, Virgo. When you feel like you are trying to put something into a material form that is to be passed on as a legacy to future generations, or trying to be preserved against the ravages of time, that will start to trigger all of the micromanaging tendencies, all of the monomania type of stuff. And that's what I was going through in the studios. I was thinking about it in terms of not of being in the moment of this creation that I'm trying to make. I was like, how do I make this thing, this creation, that will be thought of in the pantheon of artists 50 years from now, like the artist that I liked that had lasted for 50 years. And that's way too much pressure to put on anything or anyone, okay? And I think that if Virgo rising, if you allow yourself to just be in the moment rather than thinking that whatever you're making in that moment has to be so ironclad against entropy or decay, then that will allow you to move forward with less anxiety. So learn a new process. If you need to reskill. You've got Mars moving out of your 8th house, so maybe the conflict potentially with a shared resource is about to become alleviated a little bit. Although there is Mars moving into Taurus and squaring Pluto, just be careful with legal conflicts with service people. I have a Virgo friend who hired a service that didn't provide the right, I don't know, they didn't do the service very well. And there was a lawsuit that started around that. And at the end of the day, and from my perspective, I've often had to ask them, is this worth it? And the answer was, it's the principle of the thing. And oftentimes with Virgo types, it is the principle of the thing. So be very careful about that, especially with people that have done a service for you. If you have an issue like that with Mars squaring Pluto and then eventually coming together with Uranus in your 9th house, which is related to legal issues often. Rachel says, Virgo stellium 2, Spencer. How many times do I learn this lesson? How many times do others' reactions not at all reflect my own criticisms? Oh, man. It is lifelong, friend. It is lifelong. And that's really the key, Rachel, isn't it? Is that the reason why Virgo types are so... they get so angry at any type of criticism. I know myself included. Is because we've beat ourselves to hell and back about the imperfections. If you tell a Virgo type something if you point out something that they've done wrong or an imperfection in their artwork, I almost guarantee you that they've seen it way before you did and have been obsessing about it. And if you point it out to them, you're like, you'll get this, I know, I've been working on it. And it's a great way to really piss off your Virgo friends, is pointing out their flaws. Not to say that they're all completely self-aware in that regard, but I would say have grace with them, because they probably have dragged themselves way harder than you might be intending. But yeah, that's a lesson for us with Virgo placements, is that oftentimes people don't notice those tiny little details. That's what I had to tell myself at the end of my recording, is that someone is not going to hear the slight note bending in my vocal track that I was driving my engineer literally crazy with, to the point where they kicked me out of the studio. Like I had like 5 different vocal tracks, and I wanted to cut it up into the perfect vocal track. And I could hear all these changes, but the engineer was like, that doesn't, at the end of the day, and I've learned this the hard way too, sometimes the first take is just the best, and it has the essence of the feeling, and you don't have to make it perfect. It just has to get your point across. And that's, I think, really true, and something to consider with this new moon as well, Virgo. Rebecca says, I have my South Node in Virgo on the 5th, and I'm a painter. I feel this perfection pressure. Yeah, Rebecca, just enjoy the process. Enjoy the process, friend. You got this. Lean into that Pisces North Node and just know when to say, you know what, I've done enough. And let nature complete the final 10%. That's like a Japanese concept. I believe it's called wabi-sabi, is leaving the last little bit to nature to complete. Pantera says, gotta go. Great to see you doing well, Spencer. Helping everyone has a wonderful beginning to June. Take care, friend. Nice to see you stopping in, and hope everything's well with you, my friend. Okay, so let's keep going. Hopefully that is helpful for you Virgos out there. Let's talk about Libra. First, before we do that, let's take a little stretch. Do me a huge favor, friends. Take a little stretch. Get a little drink of water real quick. Okay. Do me a huge favor. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Like this video. Go visit me at spencermichaud.com. Sign up for a reading. Sign up for the group class. This is going to be super fun. I've tried to make it as laid back and low key as possible. I picked a book that I feel is really important for these times, but also one that has great stories in it. Like, this is not a hard read. This is an easy, enjoyable read. It's the perfect summer book, in my opinion. It helps us appreciate nature. It challenges us to think in ways that are collective and also rooted in generosity. And I think that it would do us all a lot of good to discuss some of these issues as we navigate some real important challenges. All right. Go follow me over at Spencer Michaud on Instagram and Twitter and Threads if you're into that as well. I tend to keep it light over there. You'll see more animals and hopefully things that are inspiring through nature on my Instagram in particular. But yeah, check it out. All right, let's get going back to Libra rising. I've got some comments coming in. Yeah, Chalish says, yes, person blue holding pencil. There you go. Oh, I gotta get my back all stretched out. I gotta try to save some energy today so I can. I've got like I don't have a huge yard, but it's like maybe a quarter of an acre, and I've got a whole back area that needs to be weeded and all of the crap removed before I buy a bunch of plants tomorrow. I'm trying to save some energy so that I can go do that, but so it goes. All right, Libra rising. New moon, 9th house, squaring Saturn in your 6th house. So this is an interesting new moon for Libra risings, particularly because Venus will have just gone through its Cazimi. Okay, so this is a point in time where your first house ruler, and of course it's also the ruler of your 8th house, so there's something that could be renewed in both of those topics. has just gone through a very, very interesting enlightenment, spotlight, renewal in the heart of the sun. So this could be a really important phase for you for being able to pursue education, to be able to teach as well. I know we've got a friend of the channel here. Our friend Robin here has I believe, a college degree in Indigenous Studies, and we'll be bringing that perspective and wisdom to the book club, which I'm really excited about. So, an example of a Libra rising potentially being able to share their wisdom. Okay. Be careful with your health, Libra risings, right now, because you might want to go do all the things. You might want to see all the different things of the world and go on a trip or something like that. But there could be a health challenge or something that is, or a work challenge with sixth house that is pulling you and slowing you down a little bit, which is okay. You know, sometimes here's what I will say about that. You all have your south node hanging out in the first house as well. That can lead to a draining of energy, vitality, etc. What I will say about that is that I have found, especially when you're doing like projects, group work, etc., sometimes we're at our best and sometimes we aren't. Sometimes we have energy to participate, sometimes we don't. And that's okay, you know? I think that for the Libra risings who are dealing with Saturn, sixth house issues, first house, south node stuff, every day is going to be different. And I think just presence when you are just being able to participate at the level that you are able to is important. So if you are constantly feeling like low energy, Libra rising, this is a good time to have some grace with yourself and realize that it's just as Virgos. So I'll give you the Libra version of the speech I just gave for Virgos. Just as Virgos are obsessed with the perfection of something that they are creating, I think the Libra version of that is, can I give my social energy to this group, this person, etc.? Can I speak up for justice, and can I participate in creating a more fair and balanced, beautiful world? And when you're not feeling well, a lot of times, like Leos, this is a Leo thing too, that if we're not feeling our best, sometimes we want to run and hide. And I think with Libra rising, if they're feeling like, I'm just not feeling my best, I don't want to participate in this, I think that people will have forgiveness for that, right? I think that my messaging for Libra rising is, it's okay if you're not at your best, that people will still care about you, and like they will still be able to, your presence is still valued, rather than, you know, feeling like you have to always be trying to create harmony within the group. It's okay for other people to take the lead with that, right? It's okay if you need time to like recharge the battery. I would say another thing is that Mars is going to be moving out of your seventh house. So this is probably a resolution of maybe some conflicts that you might have been having with a partner or with a business partner or something like that. And that's probably a welcome relief too. Mars moving out of your seventh house could also be better for your health too, because Mars isn't making an opposition to the house that is representative of your body and your health. So hang in there. Be open to exploration, but pace yourself, okay? Oh, Devin says, Allegiance to Gratitude is my favorite chapter. Yes, it's a great book, Devin. And Devin and I are often on similar wavelengths with things, and I think Devin was talking about this book. I don't know if I got hip to this from Devin or not. Maybe I did. There's a lot of things that Devin gets me hip to, but I really like it. It's a really great book, and I've been talking with my partner and saying, this is sort of a version of Sand Talk, another great book that I believe Devin kind of lit our collective light bulbs towards. But it's the American version of it, and there are a lot of similarities in that in indigenous thinking on both sides of the globe. Um, Sand Talk was written by an indigenous Australian, and this book is written by an indigenous American. And as much as I like Sand Talk, and it's a phenomenal book, I really relate more to this one, just solely from the fact that I live on this continent. I'm familiar with these plants, with these animals, with these woods, with these lakes and streams, etc. And she's a really great writer too. She's an awesome storyteller. So hope you'll join me for that. Tracy's saying so true. Talking about Libra rising, I think, Tracy, right? Devin says, my fur baby Blue is struggling with blockages in his intestines. Oh no. Well, I'm also studying 2 types of timing techniques for astrology. Well, there's Saturn in the 6th house, right? That's a perfect example, Devin. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry that that's going on. I feel you, buddy. Because I had a very expensive vet visit for my cat recently who was really under the weather and had stopped eating last week. And we took him to the vet, and he didn't have an intestinal blockage, but he had an infection, and they think he might be diabetic. And he's only 7. Gandalf is possibly dealing with feline diabetes, it sucks, man. I'll tell you, there's nothing worse than seeing your innocent companion struggling. And at the time when we were going through, and I was thinking about what I'd be willing to do to help him financially and otherwise, when he was sick, I was like, I don't care. I don't care what it costs. I'll do whatever it takes. And in that moment, you really know what you value. You know what I'm saying? So I feel you, buddy. And I hope that Blue heals up and that, everything's okay. But pace yourself, man. Here's the thing. To me, studying is important. And again, Devin brings us a great example because Rigel, 16, 17 degrees Gemini, is about learning, teaching, etc. And there's a strong desire to just dive in. But there's something that's holding us back with Saturn, right? And in Devin's case, it's having a lot of responsibility with his fur baby, So just be very careful of overextending ourselves with the Saturn square. This is a great example of that. And I'm sure Devin's you're doing everything in your power to help Blue, and the books will be there, is what I'll say. The books will be there. The studies will be there. The timing techniques will be there. These little important creatures in our life, they're not always there forever. I've learned that the hard way with pets. Is the sad thing about having a pet or a furry companion is that they don't live as long as us in most cases, unless you're a bird owner, and then you have to deal with the challenges of that. Which birds can be amazing companions, but they also can be really loud and super messy. My grandfather had a hyacinth macaw, and my mom had a cockatoo, and it bit me. They both bit me a lot and shrieked a lot. So I'm not a bird person, although I'm sure if I connected more with a pet bird, it would be, I don't know. I digress. I like seeing birds out in the wild. I like going out with my dad and looking at birds through binoculars rather than having them in my house. But cats, I'm definitely a cat person. But anyway, Libra rising, hang in there. If you or a companion have a health issue, one day at a time, figure out where your priorities are, figure out what you can and can't do too. This was a hard thing I had to learn with my previous furry companion, Kitty Bear, is that there's only so much you can do, and that eventually we have to let them go and let them go with grace. So wherever stage that you're at with that, if you're still fighting and there's still things that you can do, I wish you the best of luck. And if you're at a stage that you have to let them go, I send you my love and hope that it's a graceful transition. All right, let's keep going, friends. Oh, I tell you what, dealing with a sick furry companion is one of the hardest things ever. I just, especially when you're a little bit of a, for me, I wouldn't call myself antisocial, but I'm very much a hermit. I spend a lot of time in my home. I spend a lot of time with my cats, like especially since the pandemic too. I see and interact with them more than any other human, besides my partner. My partner goes to work outside the home 8 hours a day during the week, so I actually spend more time with the cats than I do with my human partner. So it's tough when they're not feeling good, but we do the best that we can, and they teach us so much. They teach us so much about unconditional love and about temporality and about appreciating the moment. Uranus Ascending says, I'm a cat person too. Best to your fur babies, Devin and Spencer. Thanks, friend. Appreciate you. Thank you, Tracy, as well. Scorpio rising. Let's take a look at it, Scorpio. Scorpio rising, you have a new moon in your 8th house. And Saturn is making a square to it from the 5th. There is Mars moving out of your 6th into your 7th. Oh, Scorpio rising. It's a new moon in the house that's related to death, amongst other things, but also shared resources. It's related to debt and taxes. There could be an issue that you're dealing with where you're exploring your options with a debt or tax issue. Could be something where you're trying to reconcile with what happens after someone or something passes as well. This 8th house is what happens after a completion. So there's a lot of focus on what happens after some kind of completion. It doesn't have to be a death. It can be just the end of one process and the beginning of another. The square from Saturn, there could also be challenges and responsibilities with children or with the way that you pursue your own personal creative process or the way that you pursue pleasure. That's a nice way of saying that if you're struggling with like addiction or something like that, that can be put, in this case, it could put a lot of pressure on a partnership and your resources that you share with a partner. So be careful of that. A lot of the Scorpio story, just as we've talked about some generalities with Leo and Virgo, etc., a lot of Scorpio stories do deal with recovery and with becoming reborn from trying to keep an old form alive, but also trying to, I think oftentimes when we aren't able to deal with our grief, we disassociate. And the reason why a lot of Scorpio and Scorpio rising people have stories of addiction and recovery is because it's hard to deal with loss. It's hard to grieve a loss. And when I see Scorpio in a chart, it says this form has outlived its time. This form needs to be returned to the earth in some area of their life. And it's painful. And I would suggest that the courage of a well-balanced Scorpio type is to be able to feel the hard feelings and to face them rather than to try to escape them. So the addiction part really is trying to escape difficult feelings, trying to escape our grief and our sadness. And I think that could be part of this new moon story, is coming to terms with grief and sadness so that we don't turn to things that are toxic for us and for others to be able to deal with our pain. It's very easy, especially when old wounds are triggered, when we're going through a stressful experience. Let's say someone in your life is passing on. It is easy to lash out and to project our anger onto others. And this is an opportunity to do it differently if you have fallen victim to that in the past or fallen prey to lower impulses of this particular sign. I will say Mars is about to move into your 7th house and square your Pluto in your 4th. So Scorpio rising, your ruling planet, is moving out of its domicile and into its exile. So this is a time to, if you are feeling stress, and Alish has a really nice comment here. It says, Scorpio rising here. Saturn in the 5th house. My son is sitting state exams in June. He's a Pisces. The outliving and needing to compost old forms is really useful. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Alish, like your son's probably under a lot of pressure right now, right? And, you know, having to deal with the responsibilities that he is having, or and accepting the fact that, honestly, Eilish, if your son's getting to that point, it means he's growing up, and that your relationship is changing and transforming, and that's sad. There's some sadness to that, right? I know I've gone through that with a child who has grown up and gone off to college. It's a lot to process. The one thing I'll say too is that be very careful about lashing out at a partner or something like that if you're feeling stressed or sad about something else, because Mars is about to move into your 7th house and immediately square your Pluto. And that could be bringing up a lot of anger, and oftentimes misdirected anger, around the changes that are happening in your family, etc. And it only has the potential to get more electric when Mars conjoins Uranus on July the 14th and 15th. So be aware of that. This is probably a little bit of a difficult few weeks for Scorpios coming up. But I know that what I do know about you Scorpios is that you're tough, and that you, when your backs are against the wall, when there's a crisis, you're often at your best. So this is an opportunity to be at your best rather than your worst. I have a Scorpio person in my life who's losing a family member at some point in the near future in hospice, and I've been encouraging the people around them and them to grieve, you know, rather than project their anger out into other spheres, and to give each other the space to grieve rather than to have to make someone wrong. Here's the thing. When you're going through loss, when you're going through pain, and you're going through compost, it is very difficult sometimes to be angry at fate. That is really a powerful realization that I've had in my life, is oftentimes when there's things that were out of my control that were negative, and I wanted to be angry at something that I couldn't control, it would often get projected on whatever's closest to you. And that's when we have to really take a look in the mirror and say, you know what? Sometimes fate just deals us a blow. Sometimes things are just in transition, and we don't have to make someone or something wrong. We just have to accept that these changes are happening. So I hope for you, Scorpio rising, that you'll be able to go through those changes gracefully without necessarily having to make anything or anyone wrong. It's just change. Okay. Yeah, a lot tough aspects. Some of these are tougher than others. You know, the fixed rising signs, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, and Taurus, you're going to have that Mars-Pluto square in angular houses. So there's something coming that you'll need to navigate with grace, with the Mars-Pluto square, and then eventually with the Mars-Uranus conjunction. So just give yourself extra self-care around this period, so that for example, so that you don't get to the point like we were talking about with Taurus before, where you've put off feeling something so long that you explode with anger in it, and it's irreconcilable. So do the proper self-care to alleviate those things before it erupts volcanically. Okay, let's keep going. Sag rising. What's up, my Sag rises? Sag risings. All right. So Sagittarius rising. Here is an angular new moon with an angular Saturn square. We were talking about Mars and Pluto being angular for the fixed risings, but in this case, we have mutable signs having an angular new moon. So for the Sag risings, we have a new moon in your 7th house, which is traditionally related to a place of completion. It's the setting sun. It is also a place of partnership and the other, open enemies, etc. And it is a place where it is also related to the public. So there could be a new start in relationship to public. It could be a new partnership type of thing. I know we just had some Sag risings that were talking about they just got a new vehicle, and they were also having discussions with partnerships and things like that. Just be careful with a new exploratory type of experience with a partner, to respect the challenges of Saturn coming from your fourth house, which is related to home, family, domestic situations, your roots. This could be you wanting to make a new start with a partner, but maybe there's a aging family member that has responsibilities or something like that, and things of that nature. So be careful with that. Jupiter, your ruling planet of the first house, has just gone into its exile as well. So this is a time, oftentimes Sagittarians want a goal to work towards. They want to have some certainty about the direction that they're heading. And when Jupiter moves into Gemini, it splits you off into many different tributaries, remember? So imagine the arrow splitting off into like 5 different directions. And it's hard to hit a topic when you don't know where you're aiming. So you might have to figure out where you're aiming again. And that requires humility. That requires saying, oh, you know what? I don't know that. You know what? I'm going to ask some questions. There's no shame in asking questions. This is another, both Leo, all the fire signs have trouble, I think, sometimes with certainty, with saying, I feel passionately about this, and this is the way it is. And the air signs love to ask those questions. And I think that we can learn something from that in this case by learning to ask the right questions and being humble enough to receive the answers. Deb is here. Deb says, Sag rising, was walking and my lower leg broke. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, Deb. My 6th house is busy with Pluto, Venus, and Virgo in the 8th. Now health sensitive. Oh my gosh, Deb. Well, Deb, you've got Mars hanging out, about to hang out into your 6th house. So be careful if you are increasing your activity level. Pace yourself. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing you in class too. Okay. So let's move forward. Capricorn rising. Now, our Cap rising friends have a new moon in the 6th house. Saturn is hanging out in your 3rd. And it is overcoming from the 3rd. So Capricorn rising, Saturn is that ruling planet. So this is the thing that's guiding your ship right now. Now, from what I've learned from Capricorns in general, is they don't really like rushing things. They like to take things at their own pace. Now, in Gemini season, things just start to speed up. There's just a lot of different things asking for attention. There's a lot of different communications that have to take place. This could be a new start in a work. This could be a new job. This could be a new person that you're working with. Like this could be a new service provider. I know in our own life, we're about to hire an electrician to rig our house up for being prepared for a generator. So my partner is a Capricorn rising, so this could be working with a new service provider. Mars is going to move out of your 4th house and into your 5th. So be careful of the square to Pluto with the 5th and the 2nd house. There might be some budgetary revelations that come from seeking pleasure that are uncomfortable and need to be reconciled with. I think this is a good time for Cap risings to buckle down and do the tough mental work. You know, this is, when you have a 6th house stack up like this, it feels like the work is endless. And Capricorns are great at doing this very thing, buckling down and getting what needs to get done. Pace yourself, though. Try not to overthink it. And I think with the 6th house placement, recognize that it's not going to last forever. Like the hard work, the grind, eventually these planets will start leaving your 6th house and you will get to that point of completion where you can maybe relax a little bit more. But Gemini season is usually fairly busy for Capricorns in general because of the stack up in the sixth house. You might get some information about your health too. So that this could also be something where you're having to ask a lot of questions about a health issue potentially. All right, let's go to Aquarius rising. Do me a huge favor, friends, while we're talking about this, go ahead and like the video if you can, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. And if you are enjoying the work that I'm doing, you can purchase a super chat or a super sticker or buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. That goes a long way to helping me keep the lights on and things of that nature. I know that I just really appreciate it, and you all have been so generous with me, so I appreciate that. Okay. So Aquarius rising. We've got a new moon in the 5th house with an overcoming square from Saturn in the 2nd house. So Aquariuses are probably having a lot of impulses towards a new creative process. 5th house is also how we seek pleasure. Could be a new romantic interest, etc. Could be a lot of different options potentially. Maybe there's a lot of different competing things that you want to pursue. Because maybe you're feeling good. Maybe you're feeling like, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit better about life. I want to pursue things that are important to me. The key with this Aquarius rising is that your financial picture is saying, whoa, hey buddy, slow down. Okay, like there's only so many shekels to go around, right? There's only so many resources to go around. Okay, so this is a time where you probably have to be cognizant of your budget and say, I've got to pursue things that are I can afford. This could also be something that is really having a lot of questions asked about what you eat too. Because with Saturn in the 2nd house, Saturn is saying, hey, 2nd house is everything that feeds the 1st. Okay, everything that is moving into the 1st house. So it's saying, are you being responsible about what you're consuming? And that in turn is reflected in your budget and things of that nature. Oftentimes when we are consumers, we're spending money on it. So we have to be careful about being overconfident with our resources, especially for Aquarius rising. Now, Aquarius rising, you've been going through a lot of bigger picture changes with Pluto in the 1st house. One day at a time. What I will say for you, fixed rising Aquarius, is that Mars is about to move into its exile, into the 4th and square Pluto in the 1st. So a potential conflict on the home front with a family member could lead to some really intense feelings. So be very careful about that. Be very careful about expressing your anger with a family member or with a home. There could be some corruption that's exposed with the home itself. And that could be pretty frustrating. It might even be bringing you some changes with how you delegate resources as well. So be careful with that, and especially be careful as we get into mid-July that you're not letting these particular challenges that have been revealed this week. This is another thing I wanted to say to everyone. If there's been anything that's been revealed as a problem, a Taurus 3 type problem in the past week with Mercury, Uranus, where you are either seeing that something has fallen into disrepair, or maybe you're finding a solution to something that had fallen into disrepair. Expect that theme to be reignited with Mars and Uranus coming together in July. So if you prepare now, that challenging period could be smoother. So if there's been something on your mind of like, hey, I've got to do this to fix this problem, taking action on it before the July 14th, 15th week could put you in a much better spot. So it's especially true for these Aquarius risings with that moving into the 4th house. If there's something that was revealed to you about a foundation issue or like a home or something like that, or like with a family member, like maybe there's something that you needed to do to repair a relationship or repair their health or something. If you take action on it before Mars, meets up with Uranus, probably going to smooth that process out. Okay? All right. Pisces rising. We got a couple more friends. Thank you so much for sticking around and spending your Friday afternoon with me. I know I got some gardening to do, but let's stick it out to the end here. So Pisces rising. Pisces rising has, This is a mutable rising, which gives us an angular new moon. So this one is really fascinating to me because we have a new moon in the fourth house, and it's being overcome by a square from Saturn in the first. So probably a lot of different questions about your living situation. Maybe you want to move. Maybe you are moving. Maybe you're trying to find the best way to figure out all the new things that you have to work through when you go through something like that. Maybe there's a lot of options that are coming to you from your family, a lot of different, people to keep happy, so to speak. And this could be bringing you face to face with your personal limitations. Saturn, for a Piscean type, is probably not fun. I imagine that with the Jupiter ruled sign, there is a desire to just have faith in the process and say, you know what, it's just going to work out. I'm just going to have faith in the process. And I appreciate that about you Pisceans and Pisces risings, etc. Challenge with that, with Saturn, is saying, you know what, a Pollyanna attitude is not going to pay the bills. It's not going to concretize that dream. I was seeing someone talk about quote unquote manifestation the other day, and it was a video. I don't know where I saw it, on Instagram or something. They were talking about manifestation, and they were like, manifestation is different than wishful thinking. Manifestation is not just saying, I want this, and just being open. And this is partially true. You do have to be open to receive. You do have to decide what it is you want. But manifestation is all about taking the actions that you need to bring that dream into reality. And Saturn is it's teaching tough lessons that you're not just going to be able to wish something into existence. There's hard work involved with that. And that's okay. That's all right. Some of the dreams may have to die and be released. Maybe it's related to a place that you wanted to live, or a place you wanted to explore. Maybe you had a siren's call to a certain location, perhaps near water, and now the reality of that is coming home, and maybe it just didn't work out. And you're exploring your options. There was a lot of action in your second house with Mars there, but Mars is going to be leaving your second house, which I think is somewhat good news, although having a ruler in its own domicile can be positive, even if it's a malefic planet potentially. And now the money ruler of your second house is moving into exile and aversion to that house. Could be a financial strain for Pisces risings potentially. The other thing about Pisces rising is that your planetary first house ruler, Jupiter, just moved into its exile. So you might be just feeling a little bit out of your element right now, a little bit lost. And maybe, again, I have a feeling there's a lot of Pisces that are adjusting to new situations, new living situations, new jobs, new just ways of expressing themselves that are more rooted in what is possible and what is real, and not always the strong suit of Pisces, right? Pisces is about what is possible in my imagination, which is endless, which is limitless, and teaching us the limitlessness of certain dreams. But just a tough spot. We've all gone through it, Pisces. We're all, if we're lucky, I don't know if this is true necessarily. This isn't true. Many of us have gone through Saturn experiences. I was going to say all of us have gone through Saturn in the first house, but that is not true. Saturn only changes signs. Let's see. Yeah, no, it is true. If we're old enough, I guess I will say, with the caveat. If we're over 30 years old or whatnot. If we've had our Saturn return, we've gone through that Saturn in the first house experience. But some of you we might have a younger audience here. But I digress. So hang in there, Pisces rising. Keep the faith, but also do the things necessary to bring the dream into reality. Explore your options. Don't overestimate your ability. This is one thing that's true with Pisceans. Pisceans just kind of, oftentimes they'll float along on the river or the ocean currents of life and be like, you know what, I'll just end up where I need to end up. And that is admirable in some situations. But there will be other things that are impossible to manifest if you don't get down and get your hands dirty. Okay. So that is Pisces rising. Now we have Aries rising. What's up, my Aries risings? Where's Big Steph? Is Big Steph here today? Big Steph. My French expat friend, I think. Okay. So Aries rising. I believe my good friend Raj is Aries rising too. What's up, Raj? Let's see. You have a new moon in the third house, Aries rising. You've had Mars hanging out in your first, firing you up, empowering you, giving you energy. That's about to move into your second house, so that there could be some conflicts that start coming up about resources potentially. But this new moon in the third house could be something related to siblings, could be related to your daily habits and routines where you're exploring a new learning cycle, a new routine, etc. But you have to be careful with Saturn in the overcoming square from the 12th house. This is something where there could be just some heaviness coming from the 12th house, like maybe a strong desire to retreat from the world that is limiting the ability to go out and be social. This is another thing that Saturn in that overcoming square is speaking towards. Gemini is a very social sign, right? It's exploratory. It is expansive. But Saturn is maybe limiting our desires to go out and be social. Like, for example, like I want to go to the plant sale tomorrow, but I also in the past have wanted to go to the neighborhood garage sale, which is a big event in my city of Ypsilanti, the normal park garage sale. But I'm not really feeling very social this week. I just want to go to the plant sale, get my plants, and do my garden. I don't really want to walk around and talk to like a million people. And maybe that's Saturn's influence, so that could be part of this, is feeling like we should go out and do something social, but Saturn's really encouraging us to embrace our solitude. So with Aries rising, like you might be really feeling the need to retreat from a social event or something of that nature at this new moon. Be very careful with your resources and how it relates to a group, with Mars moving into your second house and squaring Pluto. So try not to be too impulsive about sharing resources with the group or something of that nature, or getting into conflicts about your beliefs versus the group's beliefs, etc. That could lead to trouble down the line, especially with Mars conjoining Uranus as well. So hang in there, Aries rising. You got this, and I have faith in you. We're going to talk about Taurus rising in a second. We've got some comments coming in. Mortal Wild here is what's up, Carol. Notice you were live a bit late, but I'll scroll back to Aquarius rising. Good. Good luck with that, Carol, and hope everything's going well your way. Devin says Astro Magic is working with nature to aid your attempt to manifest, but building a relationship with those forces empowers that activity. I agree with that, Devin. And there was a phrase that I believe I learned from these tarot cards called, I think it was the Osho cards. And it talked about a parable in Islam that talks about praying to Allah but tethering your camel. And it was a story of someone who was just like, oh, I'm not gonna. They're traveling through the desert and they're not gonna tie their camel up because they're like, oh, Allah has it, God has my back, basically. And the next morning the camel's gone because of course it just wandered off. And then a friend said to him, well, you pray to Allah, but you tether your camel. And that's stuck with me for a long time. Is you do the prayers, you do the connecting with the deity, and you have a relationship, but then you have to do the work that they show you is necessary. That you have to become the channel, the instrument for that divine magic to work through you, okay? Rather than just waiting and sitting on your hands for something to just find you. And that happens sometimes. There's sometimes where good fortune comes to us and all we did was pray, and that's fine, but that's not always the way that it works. And I think Saturn in particular is really encouraging us to do the hard work to make our dreams real. Okay, Taurus rising. Thank you for your patience. You have a new moon in your second house. You have Saturn hanging out in your 11th house. And Mars is about to move into your first and square Pluto in your 10th. So this is a new moon for your resources, Taurus rising. For your budget, you might be wanting to spend some money on new educational material. You might be wanting to learn all the things and purchase all the programs and all the books. But there might be something that's holding you back with a potential group, maybe a difference of opinion with a social group or something of that nature. Maybe there's a lot of responsibilities that you have in an altruistic situation that are taking away from your ability to explore what you want to with your own resources. Now, once Mars moves out of your 12th and into your first house, into Taurus, it's going to immediately square Pluto in the 10th. So this could be the moment, the breaking point for the Taurus risings out there, where they've probably been patient in a lot of situations, and now Mars is coming into the first house to be like, hey, here's my anger, you know? So not a great few weeks to mess with your Taurus folks, because they will have a Mars-Pluto square from the 1st to the 10th house. So there's probably, for Taurus risings, there's been a lot of changes in social situations, and probably a lot of that has been very stressful. I know for me personally, I've talked a lot about artificial intelligence and challenges with that, and having a lot of mixed feelings about it. And maybe there's something like that that's coming, where there's, oftentimes Taurus want tangible experiences, and with things like this new digital revolution with AI, we might be losing some of that, and that could be very frustrating. That could be very scary. That could cause a lot of us to question how we are going to support ourselves when a lot of our tools and our creative processes are being consumed or done for us by artificial intelligence. And I know everyone has a slightly different opinion about the ethics and the usefulness of these, and I know that we're all trying to reckon with the changes that has brought us. Some of us are early adapters. Some of us are Luddites and slow adapters. My partner has been doing some really interesting research, I guess, or we've been having some talk about the Luddite revolution. And I don't think we always understand what that actually refers to. What it refers to is people that were working in, I believe, textile factories, or it was people who had made textiles by hand, and they were revolting against the new industrial era of being able to automate that process, so that instead of doing these beautiful handcrafted things, and maybe it's textiles, maybe it's something else, they were just becoming lever pullers, right? I mean, think about this. Think about before the mechanization process happened, that we had to make all these things by hand, and the quality was higher. It was slower, but maybe you paid a little bit more for something, but some human made it, And we're seeing this happen again with creative processes. I'm having a lot of edifying discussions with people about this, about the creative process, and the Luddites went and they took their hammers and they were smashing the machines. That was the Luddite revolution, because they were being replaced. That their craftsmanship was being lost, and they were being reduced to lever pullers specifically for the increase of profit of capitalists and industrialists. So when you hear someone accused or saying that they're a Luddite, and I find myself in this category, I am a slow adapter. I don't like mechanizing my processes. I like doing things slower and by hand and utilizing quality. Although that doesn't mean that I can't adjust. Like there are certain parts of, like for example, of artificial intelligence, they're just starting to become part of our lives, and we have to make adjustments to it. Not all of it is bad. I saw some surgical procedures where there was an AI-informed robot that was sewing together a kernel of corn, and eventually would make surgery safer for very, very minute movements. So there's things like that that's like, wow, okay, that's really cool. But there's other things that I have a lot of questions about. And I think that this might be something that Taurus risings might be feeling with, especially with Pluto moving through the 10th, where maybe they're wrestling with technology. Maybe they're wrestling with the social challenges and changes that are happening around them. So this is a good time for you to explore how you bring value to the world, Taurus rising, and how you create, what makes you feel self-esteem, what makes you feel valuable, and what options you have in whatever the changes bring us. Try not to get too riled up if there's something that is disturbing your peace. I think that we've talked a lot about on this channel about Tauruses trying to maintain their inner equilibrium and inner harmony almost at all costs. And I've been guilty of this in the past, and I fully admit it. And I think that there will sometimes be things that are so loud in the collective that you just can't make it all better. You can't maintain your inner equilibrium. I had a moment like this the other day. I think that it's important to understand that everyone grieves, everyone has a different experience of collective events in a different way. The Taurus people amongst you might not be expressing these things as publicly or as loudly, but that doesn't mean that they don't feel them or they don't care, etc. So there might be something with Taurus risings where just the collective has gotten so loud that the feelings are bubbling over with Mars moving into the first house. And Sarah is saying, I have a 0-degree Taurus rising here. I'm sorry, Sarah. I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm sorry that Mars is going to be hitting your ascendant and squaring Pluto. So maybe you can confirm or deny some of these types of feelings that I'm expressing with Taurus and Taurus rising here. I see a beautiful picture of a little robin in a nest, and I do think it is important for Taurus types to be able to have that inner peace. And because if we don't, we're just a complete mess. And I think that I am not a fan of I don't know. First of all, we work hard to maintain centeredness. And as Rebecca is saying, as a Taurus rising, I'm a Venus and Mercury in Gemini at 14 degrees. It's interesting to see what happens. Well, Rebecca, I hope that this new moon is fruitful for you. Just be careful of the square to Saturn in Pisces, etc. And Rebecca says, if I'm not comfortable, I get so cranky. I hear you, and I relate to that. And I'm feeling that we have to be able to ground ourselves, because if we aren't, that is going to leak out into other areas of our life. It's going to leak out into our professions. It's going to leak out into our relationships. So being able to stay grounded and stay connected to nature, being able to stay connected to that inner peace is important, without getting so detached that we're, not acknowledging or working to help with collective issues. This is something I'm wrestling with as someone who enjoys peace and is not a fan of rocking the boat. Like I will say, I'm really struggling with how much suffering there is in the collective right now, and I guess what I want to say about that, and what I was trying to allude to and catch myself to say it in a graceful way, is that just because people aren't expressing their grief and anger in the same way as everyone else does not mean that they don't feel it, and it does not mean that they aren't doing something about it. There are lots of different ways to help, and it's not always just sharing a story on your Instagram or a post on your social media. So I think that it's very important to recognize that, and I would say for you, Taurus rising, it's okay if you're taking care of yourself and helping in the way that's important to you, rather than feeling overwhelmed by some of that. Just be careful with with Saturn in the 11th house, with the responsibility that you have with a group, etc. And try not to overcommit yourself, especially financially, Taurus. The good news with Taurus, though, is that you will have Venus in the Cazimi, in the heart of the sun. Okay, and that is a renewal for Taurus risings, as far as potentially having a way of exploring a new educational system. And it's a renewal for your first house as well, for your ability to be, for your body, for your character, for your persona, etc. It's something that I think is going to be feeling refreshing. You just have to watch out for that Mars in the first, squaring Pluto and conjoining Uranus in the future. All right. Sarah says, Mars usually represents a lot of fear in my life, so I'm working on finding internal peace and being brave in transforming and releasing fear. Amen to that, Sarah. I agree with you on that. I think that the interesting part of working on ourselves and working on our own centeredness and peacefulness is that when we are called upon to take action in crises, then we can be the best version of ourselves. If we're constantly thrown off of our center and our equilibrium, we're not going to be any good to anyone else when our moment comes. And I've said this before, but we don't have to live in a constant state of crisis 24/7. This is the problem with the internet, is it puts us in the path of constant suffering, crisis, etc. And that's not necessarily the way that it was in the past. That didn't mean that there weren't wars, that didn't mean that there weren't famines, didn't mean that there weren't accidents and horrific tragedies. It just meant that we dealt with them sporadically, and then we had moments of peace. And it's become just so hard to release the constant anxiety that we get from a 24-hour news cycle. So I really encourage all of you to find your center and find your peace, especially as we get bombarded with challenges along the way, without ignoring it, without putting your head in the sand and saying, well, I'm not going to deal with any of that. Help in the way that you can help, but also find your own sense of peace and equilibrium, so that when your time comes, and each of us has a time, each of us has different things that we're good at helping at, that you'll be ready to take action, because everyone's going to play a role in the global changes that we're experiencing. We already are playing a role in it, and it'll go a lot better if you come at it from a place of wisdom, rather than from just a place of scatteredness. All right, friends, that's what I have for you for the rising signs. I've got one or two last things here. I'm going to bring the hexagram for us. It says, what is the essence of the new moon in Gemini II in 2024? Well, here we have hexagram number 8. And hexagram number 8 translates to union. It is also called joining with others, joining in, rallying around a leader. So this is about coming together with people. Like, Gemini often brings us new social circumstances, but we do have one changing line. And this changing line is the third one. And it says joining together with the wrong people. So that's maybe a little bit of a warning with Saturn there. Uh, Jack Balkin says this line suggests that you are chasing after the wrong people for alliance, intimacy, or union. This may be because you are engaged in self-destructive choices because you are acting out of force of habit, or because you have settled for too narrow a circle of acquaintances. Civility and sociability with such people is certainly permissible, but true intimacy is a mistake. If you cling to people who are not right for you or who do not understand you, then whether you do so out of ignorance or out of inertia, you will be unhappy. Worse yet, your behavior may keep you from developing richer and more rewarding relationships with others. And if the people you cling to are of bad character, your alliance with them will put you in an unfavorable light later on. That's interesting. So be careful. Be careful about who you are joining together with and your opinions with. As we get further closer to an election season, I love the fact that we have elections. I really dislike the rhetoric that happens during election seasons. Just be careful about being toxic with rhetoric. I think that that's an important lesson with all of this. This is changing to the hexagram number 39, which is called obstruction, limping, stumbling, adversity, impediment, trouble, difficulty, hardship, hindrance, looking inward, self-reflection, and surmounting the obstacles within. So I feel like that's Saturn, right? We may be wanting to find unity, to find consensus. Oftentimes Gemini wants agreement, but there might be some challenges to that. There might be some obstructions. There might be some hard truths that we have to deal with. And that's okay. Like, I think that what we do when we have an obstruction, I love what they say here. The judgment of this hexagram says, obstruction, the southwest is beneficial, the northeast is not. It is beneficial to see the great person, and a perseverance brings good fortune. So the southwest is receptivity and patience. The northeast represents assertion and advance. So this is where we return back to our receptivity and patience. Whenever we have an obstacle, I like the metaphor of water that pools its resources together to spill around an obstacle in a stream. So oftentimes we just have to wait and we have to gather strength, and then eventually we'll spill around the obstacle. A great metaphor for Saturn in Pisces, which is sort of like a giant boulder blocking the stream on some level. So have patience. Get back to a sense of centeredness and find meaning within your life so that you can move forward with more certainty. Maybe not 100% certainty. There's always an element of leaping into the unknown. But this is teaching us some of the benefits of taking our time and not overcommitting us, as we've been talking about for many, many hours today. One final thing. I have an animal for you. It's the stick insect. Look at that little guy. Stick insect is pretty interesting. This is an animal that survives due to camouflage. And this is an important message right now. Sometimes we need to blend in so that we can escape a perceived threat. Sometimes stillness is the best way to deal with the challenges in our life. This book that I like to utilize animal symbols from talks about needing to build up your defenses, and that stick insects have a rather weak first line of defense. But by staying still and not moving too quickly, that's a great way to avoid challenges and predators. The other thing that stick insects are really good at is that they lay their eggs in multiple areas. So they don't lay all their eggs in one place or in one basket. That sounds very Gemini to me. So maybe to avoid some of the harsher challenges of, Saturn's overcoming square, we have to maybe not necessarily to put everything in one particular basket. Now, this is somewhat contrary to the advice that I've been giving today, but that's Gemini season for you. So we don't want to spread ourselves too thin, but we also don't want to put everything into one particular situation. We want to stay flexible. Mutable signs require flexibility. Gemini season requires flexibility. I have a feeling that not every project, not everything that we want to do is going to survive. Not every egg that the stick insect lays is going to survive. Saturn is going to come and bring an ending to some of those things. And it probably isn't going to be fun. But if you have other things that are willing to be born, you can make an adjustment. You can make a pivot, and that can put you in a good space. So that is what I have for you. So explore a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit, right? All right, friends. That's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for just your all the people that have been able to donate today as well. Appreciate you. Do me a huge favor. Please like the video today if you want to help me out, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Really enjoy creating community with all of you. I know we're going through some challenging times right now, and sometimes it's tough to come to consensus with things, but really one of the best things that you can do is practice kindness. Try to explore the world that you want to create with others while trying to fix the challenges that we're experiencing. But don't forget to have hope. Don't forget to see the beauty in life and in the world, because that can really help you to connect with why you're doing what you're doing, why you're fighting for what you're fighting for. Connect with the beauty in the world. Have balance between your outrage and your appreciation. I really think that those two things, those two balance points, are super, super important as the noise gets louder and louder. So that's what I have for you today. Care about all of you. Be kind to one another. Be kind to yourself. It's so much easier to be kind to others when you love yourself, and when you're being gentle with yourself and doing the best that you can each and every day. And that's going to be different each and every day. So, all right, my friends. That's what I've got for you. Just checking in with you in the chat. Thank you, friends. Appreciate you. Oh, Dimphy, nice to see you. Wishing me joy while purchasing plants tomorrow. Yes, thank you, Dimphy. That is something I'm really gonna enjoy. So go out there, connect with nature, and do what you can to help others and to bind together with community. Again, we're all going through these changes together. Give each other grace. Everyone's doing the best they can with the situations and the knowledge that they have in the moment. And really, my last thing I'll say is you never really know what someone else's experience is, especially if you make assumptions about people based on the activity that they do or don't do on the internet. We're all living, completely different lives than we all share. And I think that you never know what someone is going through. And I think that it's really important to give each other grace. And that is what I will leave you with today. So take care, friends, and I'll see you the next time. Peace.